Good evening and welcome to the Courier-Journal Simmons College Louisville Mayoral Forums. My name is Vita Morgan and I am the Senior Director for Engagement and Diversity at the Courier-Journal. On our first forum this evening, we focus on the Republican candidates running for Louisville Mayor. Those candidates are, to my left, Bill Diruff, the mayor of Jeffersontown and a former hardware store owner. Chartrell L. Hall, a minister and entrepreneur. And to my right, Philip Molestina, founding pastor of A. Viesto La Luz Christian Church, and Rob Stark Reichman, who works in healthcare. Welcome. Our panelists are Ben Tobin, Courier-Journal business reporter, Jalen Montgomery Lewis, a sociology major at Simmons College, and Joe Girth, the Courier-Journal's Metro columnist. They will be asking questions. Our timekeeper is Bailey Loosemore, engagement reporter at the Courier-Journal. Under our format this evening, each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each question from the panel. After our second round of questions, each candidate will have an opportunity to ask one other candidate a question. They will have 30 seconds to ask that question, and the candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. If we have time at the end, we will have some rapid-fire questions, which will require a one-word answer or an answer of 30 seconds or less. At the end, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. It is important that each candidate stick to the time limits. Our timekeeper will help you do that. When you have 30 seconds left, she will raise her paddle, displaying 30. When your time is up, she will display the red side of the panel. If you continue talking, I will cut you off, but I'll be nice about it. Now, let's get started with our first question from Ben Tobin.
What would you do to bring better paying jobs and more business to all of Louisville? Let's start with Bill Diruff and continue to your right.
Well, the first thing we have to do in this city is make sure it's both safe and the perception of downtown and the rest of the community is safe. So the policing is a key thing, but the next thing we have to be able to do is let business attract business. Government does not attract business. So many times we think the government is the one that reaches out to the business to bring them here, but it's a business that attracts business. We have a great opportunity come before us right now. Before there was UPS that came here and that brought 200 to 300 businesses here. We have Ford with a battery plant where the people leave Ford, they have a chance to either go south or north. As a person that has the largest commerce park in the state and the mayor of that for the last 12 years, I understand how to bring them here and how to incentivize them through earning the incentives in the future. So I look forward to getting out of the way when the business doesn't need us, but helping them when they do need us.
Mr. Hall.
And yes, I agree with Bill in regards to safety first, but in regards to attracting new businesses, we have to have innovative thinking. We need new, younger minds as well as the older minds to mesh together to understand what it is that we're doing. When I say old, I mean elders. So I'm of a younger generation that's of the digital, the coding, the technology. And we have to bridge that gap of understanding how we got to this place and what that looks like moving forward. So I was a part of an initiative to bring the largest youth basketball tournament in the world under one roof to the city where they said it wouldn't happen. It couldn't be done. And it ended up being a $40.5 million economic impact, and it's still going on for another 10 years. So arts and entertainment, the pieces of who we are in Louisville, more of basketball as well as we know Derby and we know Bourbon, but we need more innovation, and that takes both young and old together, working together to bridge that gap.
Mr. Molestina.
Well, like my other two candidates, friends said, I call them friends because we've been hanging out a lot. So, yes, definitely. But obviously safety is definitely there. But you'd be very surprised, spoke to a lot of developers recently in this past year, the number of jobs we would have if the zoning laws that we have in our city, if the barriers that we have to bring companies that are ready to start working would just be not so difficult. But our city government needs a lot more work in that area so that people developers that are coming to this part of the city, to Louisville specifically, will have the same benefits as other developers going to Indianapolis and Nashville that are close cities to us, and they have a very quick way to get jobs going because they have development going there. In addition to that, I want to say that we need to be specific with jobs. We know that sometimes the college route in one aspect is good, but we need to bring tech jobs. Tech jobs have the ability to bring people quickly into jobs that create wealth.
Mr. Reichman?
All right, yeah. And I agree as well with the safety issue. Nobody's going to want to join downtown or become part of this without any type of safety. So we definitely need to get the town safe before anything happens. But we need to remove the homeless camps and clean up downtown as well. So we need to remove the graffiti. We need to clean up the cars. We need to take all the boards up, all the graffiti, everything that's on, cracked windows, everything like that is basically a key start to it. And, I agree that we definitely need to invest in technology, entrepreneurs, because they're actually crucial to growing a vibrant and thriving regional economy. So we need to also deal with Indiana, so that way we have a partner with us, so that way we can grow together and come up with a plan that actually helps both of us. We need to invest in local colleges, universities as a source of the innovation, work with U of L and other colleges that are around for job creation, and then leverage, their ability to attract national attention and international attention, because they can bring in people that we can't as a city, and to drive this change, we need to have that shared vision with Indiana, I believe, and that way we would get more prospective people in. And so it just needs to be a collaboration.
Thank you. Next question.
All right. We are seeing more guns and violence in our community, sometimes involving mental health. What is the #1 policy you would change or implement to combat gun violence?
You
Are
wanna
we
start?
starting here?
Oh,
Same
I'm
order,
sorry,
or are
I'm
you
sorry.
switching?
We're going to start with Mr. Hall and then go to your right.
So yes, illegal gun trafficking is huge. There are 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds carrying around guns with 100-round drums. If you don't know this, there are about 10 main gangs in the city. There's offsprings of, and one of the gangs are 15-year-olds, where only 2 of them have fathers. So I'm actively in the community, so I know what's going on out in the streets and who these gangs are. And I've already been meeting with them prior to this as my work to earn their trust so that we can get to this place and point where we can move forward. So there's a program that I would like to implement that's being done around the country as well, and I believe it used to be done here, the Amnesty Gun Program, to get them to turn in, of partnering with churches to be able to do this, these safe spaces. And I know that's hard to understand and take because they won't be charged or criminalized, but it will continue to go the way that it's going on this trajectory we're on, where we're seeing younger and younger cases of those with guns committing crimes. A young man just got arrested. He was 10 years old at the Kroger, and he stole some cupcakes but had $80 in his pocket. When he went through his backpack, he had 3 guns with 100-round drums. They took those, let him go. He went and got more guns, and he committed a murder. So we have to have a way to bring the ones in that's ready to get in, and it has to be done quickly, and that's the first initial policy that has to come, is the amnesty program.
Thank
This
you.
question is a very difficult one to resolve, because if you look at the crime reports from last month, in the month, about a month, 30 days ago, in these last 30 days, over 250 people were arrested, felons with guns in our city. So guns are out there everywhere. And we're not even going to talk about what's even recent, which is what they've heard as ghost guns, the guns that you just can put together. So we have to address that issue, obviously, but it's like that's a big thing that's there. So the people right now mostly affected, if you look at what's the incidents that we're having, is a lot of young people. We have to, as a city, focus on getting those young people off the streets. We have to work with the young people to get them off the streets, to get them organized with community, with churches, something, because the guns are out there. They're going to get to them. If we don't work with the young people, it's hard to limit that problem that's going on right there. In addition to that, I know that something has to do more with federal government too, but our drug problem in our city is awful. We have, we're at a major highway of trafficking, and so that brings another level of gun violence and money and things of that nature. But again, like I said again, is you have the issue with just so many guns out there. We need to get our kids safe in places where they can be taken care of.
Yeah, and I totally agree that there definitely needs to be some programs to help, but that seems like it's more of a long-term. Right now, currently, the mayor has got a lot of programs that don't work, that either the council doesn't like or they just are ineffective. You know, we have a mayor that's chosen his political career over any type of gains or safety for our family. So I believe, you know, the programs will work in the long term, but I believe in the short term, you know, we need police, and we need to, you know, stop using them as scapegoats and saying that they're the issue for the problem, because that's not necessarily the problem. The problem is that we've allowed too many drugs in here. We've allowed these policies that allow criminals to just be running rampant, and we don't do anything about it, you know, and that is one of the major issues. You know, I support the police, and you know, and one of the things that we need to do is start proactive policing. We can't do that right now because we're short 300 officers, because the mayor doesn't support the police. Without that support, you know, it's going to run rampant. So what we need to do is we need to proactive police. We need to take some people that are civilians, get them to work the desk jobs, and have the police be able to go out and target these areas that have the most crime.
So in order to solve the problem, as they mentioned, we're 300 officers short. That's just by contract. We're probably needing more than that, and they need to be trained and on the ground. We believe in J-Town of doing the carrot and the stick. We believe to be firm on those who have committed crimes and help those who shouldn't be in jail at this time, that are addicted or have mental problems. We've started the Angel program in J-Town to help those that are addicted so they don't sit in jail. They become useful citizens back along in a few days, few months, few years. We stay with them. But we also believe intelligent-led policing. And Rick Sanders, who is my chief, will be coming downtown with me, and he was the officer in command in Chicago when they had 78 gangs there, and he led a task force to get rid of the head of the gang leaders. In order to get the guns off the streets, we have to get the head of the snake out of here and gone so we can save our kids and take the guns away from them. We have to also bring back the youth detention center, but we have to bring it back in a different way to where we're helping the kids when we take them to the youth detention center. As Chartrell mentioned, we had a pullover one time for a stolen car. There was 4 kids in there. They had a stolen car and they had stolen guns. We called downtown and asked, what should we do with the kids? They said, turn them over to their parents. That isn't acceptable. We have to be able to take them to a place to where they can be helped and moved on into society. As we look forward, we have to do the intelligence-led policing, but we also have to do community policing. We have to get the community and the police to join forces. That means the officers have to look like the community that they belong in. I did that okay, didn't I, Bailey? Thank you.
You all are great. Thank you so much.
I remember dealing with Bailey when she first came here, so I understand.
Okay, now at this time, it's time for the candidates to ask a question of any opponent. And we will start with Mr. Reichman. You have 30 seconds to ask a question of anyone here, and they have 2 minutes to respond.
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions for any of the candidates. I mean, I basically followed up on them and know what they're about. So I think it's just time that we turn Louisville red and get away from some of the Democratic policies. So I don't really have a question, though.
Okay. Mr. Molestina?
I think the question, I think because it's such an important issue, what Mayor Dira said is with the adding police and bringing police to the city bill is definitely going to be something that's going to be a difference, but I believe the community part of it, how do you go beyond? I know let's say tomorrow we have the 300 police. What do we do beyond that?
The question isn't either or. Do we hire police or do we hire social workers? It's an and. And in J-Town, what we've done is both. We are 10% over our contract, and actually we're going even above that. But we have also brought in social workers to help those that have the mental problems. We brought in a victim's advocate for people that are spouse abuse, so that the victim We do, well, by the way, we do not send the social worker into a violent situation because domestic violence can absolutely go sideways real quick. So we send an officer in, triage it, and then after that, the victim's advocate goes in and helps that person that is a victim get through both the court system and get through help so that they become a productive person in society, realizing what they're experiencing is normal, not normal, I'm sorry. And we also did the Angel program, to where if you are a person that is addicted, you can walk into my police department, hand over your drugs and paraphernalia and say, I need help. We got over 300 locations nationwide that we can give you help, and we don't just turn you over to them, we follow you for years. The first victim that we ever, the first addicted person that came in to our police department, we still follow them. Their mother called me the other day just to make sure that we had the contact information for their daughter. So in the future, it's both. I appreciate the question. We both need the officers that are well-trained on how to get rid of the head of the snake, as we said, and also help the kids and get to know the kids. I want the officers to know the kids before there's blue lights, that where the kids understand the officer there to help them. But also the social worker, the victim's advocate should be there to help them in the future. So it's not an or, it's an and we can do that, I can tell you absolutely, because we're already doing that in our city.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, do you have a question for one of the?
Just a question just for one. For Mayor Durf. How do you gain the trust of course you bring in the police, of course you by force, but in regards to understanding that Louisville, that every single part is Louisville and every person and every generation and passed down, how are you going to be able to not only have those you know in the business in Frankfurt, but actually out in the community with the people that may not want to get to know you or want your help but need it? How do you harness that trust?
Me personally or police officers?
You, as mayor.
The one thing that I've learned owning a hardware store is customer service is the key. And when the person comes in, whether they want a 5-cent nut or a $40,000 Bobcat, they have a problem and they want it resolved then. So if you work in City Hall for me, the one thing I explain to them is if a person calls on Thursday at 4:25 and you go home at 4:30, you solve that problem because that's very important to them at that time. So to me, but you don't wait till next Tuesday when it's convenient. That's the way government works. We should not wait till the next Tuesday. We need to get out there and help the person that needs help at that time. So when somebody calls, we go. We sit down, we talk, and you become real. You do not become a person that is bitter or bigger or anything else. You become the person that sits down that you would expect to find in a hardware store. And you don't do study after study after study. You do something that we do in the hardware store. When you come in and have a problem, you want that problem resolved right then. You don't want me to tell you to come back next week and I'll tell you how to fix it. You want it resolved right then, and you want somebody that's there to help you solve the problem at the end of the day. So it becomes a friend, and it's a true friend. And as was mentioned here, we have been sitting up here, we've been doing different forums, and we've become friends. Yes, we're in battling on getting your votes, but I can tell you at the end of the day, we will all join forces to make this city great.
Thank you. Mr. Deere?
I'm why Chartrell won. He explained to me one day what he was doing in the West End to help the kids, to get to know the kids. Kind of explain a little bit how that's moving and doing.
Good. So I'm a minister, as Ms. Vita stated. I'm at Quinn Chapel, 1901 West Muhammad Ali. I also was a part of Goodwill at the Spot, running a youth program for 16 to 24-year-olds. So what I've done and my team, the partnerships, is about partnerships. The visibility of going from community center, the Boys and Girls Club, to the schools. Like you said, you have to resolve the problem. And so you have to go in and meet them where they are. But you can't go in alone, so you have to take more and more with you. So I've been holding King's Table Talks. There's some men in here as well, where we sit down, where I've had about 200 men over the past 2 years that's been joining these meetings every month, and where we go out into the community, similar to what they do with the DADS program. And we go and we serve them, and we ask them what their needs are. We talk to them because a lot of their fathers are behind bars or they're murdered. We give them our contacts. We let them call. We go and see them. We go and pick them up. We eat with them. And we do this without anybody's dime or any program. It's just out of the love that we have in our hearts for understanding what's it gonna take to get the work done. So it's not just me individually, it's a collective of that's already been in the process that we go in and we serve as we're called and as we're needed.
As he said, the dads, which is 100 black men, go out and mentor the kids. And that's what he's doing now. Because if we don't mentor the kids for the future, we can't expect them to grow up to be great people that we expect Chartrell and everybody here to be. Sorry.
Thank you.
Hey, don't trust the politician.
I had the last
That's
word.
all.
I shouldn't have said that.
You're following the rules well. Excellent. We will now go back to our panel, and Mr. Joe Girth will ask the next question.
All right, we'll start off here with Mr. Molestina. Education is a huge issue in Louisville right now. Do you believe that Metro government should take a bigger role in Jefferson County schools in their efforts to reform, their efforts to fix the lower performing schools? And if so, what should that look like?
Well, I know it's a very controversial question because of the fact of the division that we have. The city has, in this time, no real jurisdiction over the school system. At the same time, when our city was under COVID, and our city was put under emergency orders, the mayor had something he could do. I think as mayor, when we see students, I've worked personally with students, 8th graders, 11th graders, can't read and write from our public school system, it's not something that's just a problem, it's a crisis. So it brings us to the point of saying, how does the city go ahead and bring some accountability to JCPS? We have to say constantly, I mean, I'm not saying at this point in time to advocate for creating a Department of Education in the city, but we have to somehow come to the point of saying there has to be some accountability with the school system. And if you're not going to do it, as a city government, we have to come in and work with organizations, whether it be the churches, whether it be the community centers, come up with some tutoring programs so that the students so the parents in the city have the ability to go ahead and say, at least let me get my kid tested before they get to college and I find out they can't read or write. So those are the type of things. There's other things, but the little things flashing, so I have to stop.
Yeah, and I totally agree that JCPS needs a major overhaul. We need to recognize that the public schools, the way it's funded, is not going right. If we're going to actually be equal, we all get paid property taxes, so why are these not funded throughout? Why does it matter who makes what where? Because everybody pays the tax on it. So it shouldn't be based on property values. The current system's been ineffective for so long that people are more willing to move to Oldham County, and they're more willing to go to private school. There's more private schools in Louisville than almost any other city. And there's a reason for that. It's the teachers union. The teachers union needs to be pulled back, and we need to take back some of the power. JCPS, I believe, as a whole, is too big to do what it's meant to do. It's time to get back to the communities, where the communities actually have a say in what's going on. The family has a say in what's going on. And that way, we're busing kids, we're doing all these other things. Well, their family can't be involved. And so if their family's not involved, then it's not a community anymore. So what we need to do is make these more community schools, and so that every student has the same access.
Mr. Deere?
I'm sorry. The very first thing we have to do is stop embattling ourselves in this community. Our kids are the result because we fight each other over education. We have to thank our teachers for what they do day in and day out for teaching our kids. So take the time and thank a teacher, because they go in and try to teach our kids no matter what level they're at. So we should take the time to thank them. That's the very first thing. 8 years ago, Mayor Glenn C. and myself started looking into preschool programs. We realized that the kid that's going up to kindergarten or first grade, if they are not school ready at that point in time, especially a black male, if he gets to 3rd grade and they can't read and write, that their destiny is either jail or death is pretty evident. And we can't have that. What we found out, we did studying the community of preschool, is you don't have one preschool for this whole community, and this is the curriculum that it follows. We found out that many of the preschools here are doing fantastic jobs, and others need help. So we need to look into how we do the preschool program, but we also have to look at the other end of the spectrum. So when we get into the kids getting out on the 12th grade, not all of them should go to college, but we should have the ability to go to college, but we should have the trade schools for the kids to be able to do that. And Evolve 502 has to be the ones that have the wraparound system to help them get through that system if the kids need help.
Joe, the question was, should government, local government, have a say or more of an active hand into
Take a bigger role.
a bigger role? A bigger role, I don't know if that's the necessary phrase I would use. A say for sure, maybe similar to like a board member in a business. And I say that because a voice does need to be had, because it does involve the city and the makeup of business and schooling and generations to come. So I would definitely say it should be some form of power that should be there to implement. I am for charter schools, community schools, empowerment centers, not to take away power from JCPS. As Bill said, I thank the teachers. I was a substitute teacher for a time when I wasn't playing professional basketball. Firsthand, I know I did a whole year, and it was rough, right? I'm just saying, it's rough. These young children are rough, but you know, the parenting at home, and you come to school and you think the teacher gonna fix, that's a whole nother time. Anyway. What I'm saying is there's no pressure being applied that's making a change, not just talking about it, but what is the change? And so there's a lot of studies we can do and that have been done, and you can see these charter schools in other places that's successful, like Indiana and Ohio, and we can learn from that. Not to take away from JCPS, but to help to encourage to say, what's going on? Why is there a problem? We know it's a problem. Let's resolve this. Maybe take some notes and suggestions from things that work and not continue to do what doesn't work. Definition of insanity.
Alrighty. Will combating racial inequality be a priority in your administration? And if so, what policy would you enact that you think will have the biggest impact? Mr. Reichman, we will start with you, followed by Mr. Deere.
Yeah, I believe that most of my policies will impact racial inequalities basically by overcoming structural racism. You know, I don't accept the story that America is and always has been racist to the core. Instead, I acknowledge the ways that our government has failed and continues to fail minorities. You know, I encourage policies that allow individuals and communities to flourish and be able to solve their own problems. You know, we need to address, you know, racial injustice by restructuring urban planning so that it promotes sustainable growth. This begins from the ground up with infrastructure that promotes community. This also means drastically scaling back zoning regulations so communities can decide what is best for them. You know, the policies are only a beginning and not an end. You know, it's a long-term goal, obviously, but, you know, we need to work on creating genuine communities that are safe, where kids can walk around, where they can go to school, you know, where they have public transportation, where they have parks that they can play, you know, and so we need to work together to achieve equity for every child in Louisville, and I think that most policies will work towards that.
I was involved in a meeting, I think it was last Friday, with Reverend Bishop Alliance. He has something that's called the Bishop's Table. Not sure if you've been down there, Chantrell, I think you have. And it's very interesting because it's a breakfast that he has every Friday, and you're involved, and there's anywhere from people that are running for office, people are in office, officers, protesters, ministers, and people from the community. This is down in the heart of Vermont, downtown, down in the West End. But people sit around the table and they eat and they talk, and it's open conversation. And that's what we need in this community to realize, how do we move forward? So conversations like that are no holds bar. When somebody says something, they may get mad at each other, but at the end of the day, they come back together and look for solutions. But as a mayor of Jeffersontown, what we did on the DE&I is I did not take what I thought should be corrected, because if I knew it would have been corrected, I would have corrected it previously. I did not take what my directors thought would be corrected. I took the person that is the employees and had them form a DE&I group of how do we change the internal workings of our city, and then we go outside that and look at how do we get the outside to view our city as a place that is equitable for everybody. So we first changed what we had in J-Town, anywhere from our employee manual had items that need to be changed, to our applications became blind applications when they came in, to how we were doing lateral transfers for policing.
And no, I have not been to the breakfast yet, but I have met with Bishop Lyons at his church and his radio show as well. I was on his radio show, and I told him I will make it to the breakfast.
Let me know, I'll come down.
Okay, I will. I'll text
Okay,
you.
okay.
I'll text you. We really do. We text. So policy, I believe it needs to be affirmative action. Everybody sees where we are at this point. There's no going back. We know the issues. We know what transpired. Mr. Reichman talked about zoning. You know, we know that redlining has taken place. If nobody knows Joshua Poe, I would suggest you look him up and look into some of his research of this city, of how things have been divided. So we know where we currently are, and we all know we want better. There is, the color is because of the pockets and areas that we stay in that's comfortable to us. That's what it truly is. These barriers where people don't cross certain lines. I didn't go out into J-Town. That's where I'm out there now, because that's where I got my wife. So that's where my wife's out there. Shout out to my wife, Shell.
No, she got you.
She got me. You're right.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
right.
yeah.
I got to start taking more notes. She got me. But I ventured out to J-Town 18, 19 years old. I had never gone there. I stayed in the West and South End. But I wasn't kept out of. You just know it wasn't for me to go until I got invited. And as I got invited to these areas, and I brought my friends to mine. So as we grow as adults and businesses, we start to just stay in our comfort zones. And so now I don't think it's a policy, more so of an affirmative action that has to take place.
Well, the answer to the question is, will combating racial inequality be a priority? And the answer is yes. But racial inequality, you have to realize, comes from income inequality. And income inequality comes from educational inequality. So we talk about its subject, but you have to get down to the root of what that subject's about. As Mr. Dira said, teachers are not the problem. My sisters are teachers. I have my mom's side of the family, there's 200 teachers. Teachers are not the problem. The problem that we have is the board and the administration. So all policies need to be taken a look at in the city that address the educational inequality. Because if you have an educational inequality and that reflects into your income and everything else, that's where the problems come with housing, incarceration, homelessness. It all begins there because of the fact that because the education level is not where it needs to be at, then we have these disparities. And those disparities are the ones that at the end of the day is what we call racial equality.
Thank you. Next question.
Mayor Diriff, I'm coming at you with this one. Louisville is short tens of thousands of affordable housing units. And it seems every time that we talk about putting some of these units in places in the city that aren't the West End, aren't the South End, there's pushback. What would you do to bring affordable housing to areas throughout Louisville and not just in the areas where they traditionally are?
Well, we just had an announcement yesterday. LDC is putting 12 different packages together to bring affordable housing to Louisville. But that is fantastic. It's places that are scattered different parts of Louisville. The thing we have to watch, there's 2 that they're putting out in Jeffersontown, one on Billtown Road, one on Taylorsville Road. That is great, but we're putting them in areas where they're not on bus lines and there's not services, our grocery stores, our government availability. So if you're putting a person in there that does not have the ability to get there, you have to put them in areas to where they have the ability to get there. The next thing we have to do on affordable housing is one thing, we have a one-time shot right now. We have all the money that's the ARP money, and we should take $100 million of that, invest it into affordable housing. And when I mean affordable housing, it's attainable housing. And attainable housing is a little different, and we should build houses for these people to live in, to own, so they can get generational wealth. If we put people in apartments, we're not doing the same thing as we are if we work toward generational health. And when we do that, we build a house to start with, a second house, and a third house. So they both can do different parts of the area of the county, but they also can be proud of the place where they're at, because not everybody wants to move out of the neighborhood that they love. A lot of times they want to stay there, but they want to have the ability to move up and gain generational wealth. And from that, we have a one-time shot right now to do it with that $100 million.
So I'll start with the West and South End before bridging out, because I answered a question on the Sustainable Living Council in regards to this, of how do you show fairness of those with the need and then those who have the businesses or the economic development piece. How do you bridge that gap so it's not a one-sided? There's a lot of abandoned homes right now. The way you make it work is by the city garnishing the lots. You encourage those in the economic development realm, but they have to reside in Louisville because we're letting too much outside influence come in and too many people that's not here just buy up and do whatever. They have to be here. Then you create the energy efficient home to continue to move forward with renewable energy. Then we're able to create these units for people to be able to move in for the affordable housing. That's the first thing. In regards to other areas, you have to meet with the council and with the people in other areas to get them to understand. I was just in Anchorage speaking yesterday. Yesterday, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were there yesterday. And Anchorage is the beautiful, #1 place, best place to live, beautiful. But in diversity, the grade rating is a C. And it's just because going back to you grow up there, you live there, this is where you are, not because we're trying to keep you out. So you have to meet, I believe, with each council because I met with them and talked with them and everything. Great conversation. I was like, man, this is awesome. I need to move out here, right? But you really have to meet people and meet with the council and meet with people in their areas to get them to understand that this is a need that we want to encourage for everybody to have the opportunity to move forward and progress in life, as Bill stated.
Well, this question, thank you, Mr. Gurr, for that question, is a question that we hear a lot about, obviously, in this campaign and in the city. But I don't think we realize how big of the problem we're talking about. We're talking about 31,000 homes, $3.5 billion. Right now, the city has $40 million that can build 350 homes. I agree with Mayor Zariff, put 100 million in there, 700 homes. We're not even close to it. So this is a problem that's severe. It's a problem. We're glad that the development is coming up. That was announced yesterday that there another 1,000 homes. We're still really behind. So what has to happen is we have to look at something, as we're saying, immediate. We need to look at urban areas that perhaps have zoning that they can build. So other cities have done this, allow them to build another apartment or residence in their garage. Those are quick solutions. And I agree with what Mr. Durr said. Put them in places, but not places where people have the access to. So I think that we need to look at the fact that it's a big problem. We need to address it in ways that are creative. And I go back to the same thing again, income inequality. Why do we have 25,000 people, homes sitting, waiting for homes? Because of income inequality.
Yeah, and I think you say that, not just the West End and the South. So obviously there's a shortage of housing everywhere. So basically, housing values are going to go up. But I feel like if you build up the West End and the South End, you basically start building these communities where everybody's involved and you have a better school, you have fresh markets instead of cash your check or a liquor store every 2 feet, right? So you start building these neighborhoods up where these people can actually, anybody that's lower income can sit there and, buy a house, have an estate so that they can give it to their children and pass it on. And that becomes more of a community effort because what happens is we say not the South End, not the West End, not this side, right? But that's not how it should be. We should build those communities up, right? So that they can make their own decisions. They have all these other things there. So when you build these houses, we make them look just like a regular market house and everybody's, basically built up instead of having to go outside. We know that there's public transit. We know that these other things exist already there. Let's build these communities up and let them make their own decisions. Let them empower themselves.
Before we go to the next question, do you all support affordable housing in the East End? Just start with you. Just a yes or no. Do you support?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I support it. My only thing is like what Mr. Deere said. We need to put it in places where it'll be beneficial for the people.
I support it as well, but I'm with Mr. Reichman as far as building up, because a lot of people don't want to go out or venture out, but to build up and invest. But yes, I do.
I would say that it should be countywide everywhere, but it should be appropriate for where it's being put. As I said, there's got to be services where you're going to put these things, not just say, hey, we're going to plop one here just because. That was a short yes.
Thank you. Ben?
So, we'll start with Mr. Hall for this next question. What do you think is the most transformative improvement the city should make to its transportation system?
I get a lot of calls, and I say a lot because I take care of my grandmother who's 77, and a lot of people in her building, and also some ministers and pastors and elders in my church about how horrible TARC 3 is. it's been so many meetings. I think it's one going on right now, actually, that I was invited to by Reverend Mays' brother. But I believe there's a universal mobility program that has to be put into place where the transportation that we have in the city that goes from TARC 3, that goes from TARC to any public transit is on one accord and affordable based on from the city. We should be eating all of that, understanding that we have to take care of the elders or those who are not able to have their own transportation. We have to be able to eat those costs so that they can get to work, so that the economy can keep moving forward. If people cannot get to work, if people can't get there and they don't have any trust or they're just left and just dropped off, it's what we're going through right now. And so we need more efforts, we need more funding, we need more attention, we need more who care, focusing on the transportation in the city, which currently we do not have at this time.
I know that we talked a lot about this year. There's been talks about this campaign of just making TARC free with the argument that only 15% of the fares are used to fund all the budget. But I'm more for dedicated bus lines. There's a lot of places, for example, like the zoo, like Kentucky Kingdom, other ones, UPS, where young people could work, but when you talk with them, I talk with them in the community and talk in the church, why don't you go work there? I can't get a ride back home. So you should have those free, dedicated bus lines to those places so the young people or other people that maybe elderly, like Chatrell was saying, that need to get to grocery stores, get into those places that they need to, so it's either food or jobs they get to, and that makes sense there. One other thing, too, that I found out recently talking is Louisville has over 45 different immigrant nations in our city that represent almost 120 people groups. I was talking to several different people, something so simple. They said, if there was a sticker on the bus somewhere I can point to tell the bus driver to stop, it would be helpful. I said, what do you mean? Because some people don't speak, I know they still have to learn the English, but they don't know, I need to get off the bus, and they're going 2-3 stops because of just not having like that. So those are small things, but improving what we can do with the people in those systems would be great.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that a lot of this would happen with innovation and bringing some technology to these buses and making them, we're a big city, but our bus system is not like a big city. And that way we need to do some innovation. Basically, we transform where you speak different languages on the bus. We redesign these buses, make them clean, make them affordable. And I think technology will obviously enhance these and make them more secure. People will be able to find out when these buses come, when they run, different modes of transportation that they could actually use. That would also work with just regular downtown as far as putting streetlights that are, advanced in there and, have AI technology. That way it reduces some traffic jams. It, reduces the risk of crashes. And so police officers are more informed with the information they get, but also visitors from out of state, out of town, and people locally, find out where you need to park, what spot's open, and what bus is running, when it's running, where you are. So I think innovation and technology is definitely a key to it.
The one advantage of being mayor of the largest commerce in this park in this state with over 38,000 employees and 1,800 businesses, we have to look for innovative ways to move our employees. Prior to the pandemic, we were working with TARC to have the TARC drop the employees at a location, say Southeast Christian, and we were going to do a circulator because we realized when you get off a bus and you have to walk another mile to your business where you work, many people won't do that because it's rain or snow or it's too far. They can get there in some other way, so we were working on a circulator. The other thing we work on is the past chair of KIPTA. KIPTA does the grants for the buses, and right now I'm working with them to do the TARC 3 new buses and do electric buses. We as understand the grants that come down from the federal, working with TARC, we can bring that money here to get the buses replaced that need to be replaced. But they also have a program called Ticket to Ride. Now, usually Ticket to Ride is something that is from, say, Louisville to Georgetown, Toyota, where they give you a bus or a van and multiple of you all get there. And you get this van all the time. Our problem with TARC is it goes downtown and comes out. It takes you 3 hours to get someplace. If you had a Ticket to Ride ability, you could move from one part of town to the other part of town, and you could get there. So we have to be able to take the last thing, we keep talking employees, we have to talk tourism. In the future, we have to have a circular that would go from the airport down through all the different areas, whether it's the fairgrounds, Churchill Downs, downtown, to the hotels, to all different places in this community, so the tourists have a great time when they come here.
Thank you. You all are so efficient with your answers that we have time for more questions. Jaylyn, Miss Jaylyn, I'm going to let you go. I know you have a couple.
Alrighty, my first question, it was going to start with you, Mr. Milstein. Is what is your plan to lower incarceration and recidivism rates in Black neighborhoods?
Well, I think, again, everything comes back to, for the last 20 years working in the community, I can't tell you the number of people, young people, that just one church has been able to keep off the streets. Just one church. We have churches on every corner, literally, or community organizations. But there's nothing will ever replace the contact that a young person has with a group of adults, the relationships that are formed, the conversations that can be held, and those are the type of things that make a difference that we have to bring in our city, because, like Chatrell was saying, young 15-year-olds in gangs with only maybe one or two have parents, have a dad or whole complete family at home. That's when you see the need. Anything that's going to replace that, anything that will fill that void for that young person to go into the wrong direction will end up with wrong results.
Yeah, I mean, you need to build the communities up, and I think that is part of it. So once you start building the communities, you start putting these grocery stores, you start putting these other things, people have a sense of pride, a sense of community. They start looking out for each other. You know, the detention center being gone, I think that's a huge issue as well, and I think that it could be changed where, you know, it is more of a rehabilitative program as opposed to just being a detention center. But, you know, we bust them out and then they have no resources. They have nobody to help them out. So that, I think that would help, but we could put a lot of programs there. But I believe that, you know, we need to do the intervention programs early. You know, we try to do it too late, but we need to do this, you know, kindergarten. You know, these things need to be started right now, because you wait until they're 17 and they've been in trouble, or 16 and been in trouble, it may be too late, right? So you want to have programs that will help them, but you want to start as early as possible, because if you can start it early and build a community, it's less likely that, you know, they will get incarcerated.
So we got to stop pulling the kid over for a broken taillight. We got to stop pulling over driving while black. We have to be able to get to know the neighbors so that we help them move forward and quit arresting people that shouldn't be arresting, and helping the people that need help. Whether they're a drug addiction where they need our Angel program, or if they're a youth that needs GVI, to where the GVI will help the kid get to where they need, mentor them, and get them moving to the forward to where they will grow up to be the mentor that Chartrell is doing and the dads are doing for the next generation. So as we look to the future of what we need to do, we need more people that are the dads and the Chartrells that are down there mentoring those people and raising them so that they realize there is a different way. It was interesting to talk to a reverend who you know that happened to be here, that the one thing that the kids are exposed to is not the many things that I got exposed to. They see sports coming out of it, basketball, football, and a gang. And we have to show them that there is other options, that they have the ability to become doctors and engineers and entrepreneurs. We have to have the people there to mentor them, to let them see there is more options than the ones that they grew up with.
Absolutely correct. Thank you. The solution is the problem. There's a gentleman sitting in the back in the wheelchair named Kalen Hall, who used to be the problem of the city. He's now the solution. Who knows better firsthand than the ones who've lived the life? You create boards, you create rooms, you create consultation. That's where consultation dollars need to go. Who's actively doing it, working in partnership with the police, that's going and telling them, look here, Day-Day, look here, little bruh. They about to come get you. I'm just giving you how they about to come get you. I'm here to warn you. It's another way. We can go in and we can talk too. Charlie Bell sitting here that's been working like just every single day since she's been in Louisville from the 90s to now. She works at the Goodwill spot every single day. Jacqueline Hollingsworth former officers. Again, the problem is now the solution, but who is going to the ones who've done it and able to galvanize them and say, Kaylin, what do we need to do? How do we fix this? Because I don't know. I wasn't in the game. I wouldn't play pro ball. Bill's a mayor, pastor, businessman in healthcare. We don't know firsthand. You bring them in, they'll tell you exactly what needs to be done, and you trust them and you let them do what needs to be done, and you back and support them the same way you back and support the police.
Thank you. Jalen, you want to ask your second question?
Yes. My second question, we could start with you, Mr. I don't know, I want to say Mr. Phillip. I forgot your last name. My apologies. What do you guys do to plan to help homelessness when it comes to their mental health and just getting them off the streets?
To you or me? Oh, okay. Oh, to you.
Mr.
Mr.
Reichman.
I want to make sure.
You're like, I gotta-
Look, everybody just do it.
Believe it or not, I wrote
Point
everybody's
guard,
name.
point guard, point guard.
You know, obviously, it is a huge issue, and so I believe that, you know, we need to set up some camps, and, you know, it's not the issue is that we need to set up where we can put up some tents, like army tents, and do some bunks. And I know it sounds weird, you're looking at me like, oh, Lord. And even have it police, right? So that way we don't have drugs coming in, and that way we don't have alcohol coming in. We're not trying to keep the good people, you know, the bad people in. We're trying to keep the good people, you know, in and let them, like, where the bad's not coming to them. So they're not getting drugs, they're not getting alcohol to them. And then they can get the resources they need. They'll be able to take their showers, you know, baths. We can take care of their health, their mental health, and you know, actually create change. We can get them a shower, shave, get them programs where they can get a job, or if they need, you know, mental counseling, it can happen right there, or they can be taken somewhere where it needs to go. But everybody can be kind of assessed, and if they need to stay longer, they can stay longer. But that way, we don't allow drugs and alcohol in there, because a lot of the issue is drugs and alcohol. So.
What we have to stop doing is moving the chairs on the Titanic and expecting a different situation to occur. We keep moving the people from one viaduct to another viaduct and hoping it solves the problem because we no longer see them. And when we start talking about homelessness, there's not just one type of homeless persons. There's several categories of homeless persons. And just to mention a few, our vets, they come back and they fight for us, but yet they are not acclimatized to this situation on a daily life, and they end up on the street. We have, in our area, we have USA Cares. There's other groups that help the vets. USA Cares will reach out, find homes, find jobs, find the capacity, what they need for the mental ability to come back to be a part of our society. We have people that are homeless because of a victim, because they got spouse abuse. A wife may grab the kids, put them in a car, and sleep on the streets, and we have a victim's advocate that should go out and help those people become back to where they realize that's normal. That's not normal. They realize that the homes, they give them the homes, they give them the ability to come back to where they need to be. We have the Angel program for those people that are addicted and need the help, and we have, as I said, over 300 locations nationwide. We have a social worker that is out there helping them all the time for those people that have the mental health. We have the area ministries that have the ability to find housing, jobs, and the mental capacity. So it's not just one situation, but we have to take the person individually and help them move off the street and give them the ability to both be homed and helped at the same time.
All great points, and I know the city is doing Stacia Bussey. She has the Hope Bus, she has the Hope Village, and I'm not trying to name drop her, she's a personal friend I grew up with, but they are currently they have the tents and everything built that they're doing and creating showers in that environment. But after working at Goodwill, if everybody's familiar with 909 East Broadway, right there by Parristown, there's a whole community of about 1,000 tents. About 1,000 tents. If you've never been over there, it's not where you can just walk in. They have to trust you. It's a whole community. And I believe what has to happen is that we have to go and we have to truly show that we care. And I say we from the highest position. It has to come with power and authority to create the change that you're able to go in and show them and listen. Because that's another thing. I've talked to a lot of these homeless people, and they come from Arkansas. They come all the way across the country. How'd you get to Louisville? They got called. Hey, come to Louisville. This is where we need to be. This is where it's. But they're coming and they're like, oh, these people are hospitable, because Louisville's very hospitable. They'll give to you. You don't have to. They care about you. Yes, we do. But now we need to ask, what is it you truly need? Because it's not $1. It's not a beer. It's not these things, right? You may want this, but that's not what you need. What's going on? Where's the hurt? That's where the mental health experts come in. But they have to trust you to be able to come in to where you are. Go to them and invite them down to City Hall. Bring them in and show them a great meal. Show them what the Derby is. Show them what the city is. Give them this opportunity to feel human, the love that we need from this city. We need to show them that we love them, even in spite of they're not from here, but you're here now, and we love you.
And this area of homelessness is definitely a big issue in our city. And I think that one of the big things the city has to do is rely on organizations that are doing and established good work already. The city needs to come in and support them, work with other nonprofits. There's St. John's, for example, is one homeless men's shelter. And they have a terrific program where they go to the camps, they know the people, they bring medical care, as Chatrell was saying, they learn and they find out there's some people that that's where they want to stay. But St. John's is an example of an organization that they're already talking about building units where they can go ahead and take the people that want to get out of the streets into those units. Some of them probably have to be there longer times. Some of them can be just transitional. But the city needs to work with organizations of that type that are experts in it. They've been doing it for 30, 40 years. They have all the systems in place. Come in and support those organizations. So those are the ones that are coming in and doing the work, and the city's coming alongside, bringing other partners into the picture so that this problem of homelessness is attacked and addressed in a very efficient and loving way, like Chatrell said we need to do in our city.
Thank you. Joe Girth, one rapid fire question.
Okay, Mayor, we're coming back to you again. If you're lucky enough to be elected mayor, you will be working with a lot of Democrats in the Metro Council, which means you're going to have to be somewhat bipartisan. And so I'm going to ask you one question to try to figure out how bipartisan you are. Who did you vote for president in the general election in 2016 and 2020?
2016 and 2020.
Rapid fire.
Gosh, I got to go back in time. That's pre-pandemic. I'm running for the mayor of Louisville, and who I voted for president doesn't matter. So, but the bipartisan, the nonpartisanship, I am a nonpartisan mayor. As KLC president, I represented 416 of 410 nonpartisan cities, and I have worked with all the Metro Council, writing laws with them and working with them on a daily basis of nonpartisanship. So I understand nonpartisan to the T.
Thank you.
Same question?
Same question.
I voted for Donald Trump. And in regards, is that it? Just that
That's
one
all?
answer?
Yeah.
You got 30 seconds if you want to use it.
I got 30 seconds to
Yeah,
use it?
You don't
Was
have,
it
you don't have to use it.
Oh, okay. No, I don't want the paddle.
Mr. Molestini.
I wish that what Mayor Dier tried to do to make this race nonpartisan would have worked, because the first thing to do is look at colors, look at that. I have no problem saying I voted for Trump. Doesn't mean that that defines everything I do, because I think the issue that we have in our city and everywhere in our country is unifying, working together, finding the best person. It's not about just what maybe someone else did in the past. It's about what we need to do for the future.
Mr. Reichman.
Yeah, I voted for Donald Trump. So
Thank you.
it's supposed to be rapid fire.
Right, that's what I
Yes,
said.
rapid fire.
That's
Thank
the
you
longest
so
rapid
much.
fire.
Now,
And non-answer.
now each candidate has 1 minute for a closing statement. Mr. Dier, we will start with you. 1 minute for a closing statement.
The next mayor has to be somebody that can lead the city into the future and unite the city. And as the past president of KLC, when the tornado hit this community and wiped out many of our cities across the state, what I did is what we should do in this community, because we have had a tornado hit this community. At that point in time, when a tornado hit Dawson Springs at 1:37 in the morning, at 6:32, I was on the phone with that mayor, seeing how he needed help, and got him help getting the cell tires by 2 o'clock that afternoon. When what we did as cities, we formed Cities Helping Cities, and that's what we need to do here. We need to unify not only all the 80 cities here, but all the communities here, so we have pride in where we go forward. And we need to be proactive. We know what the problems are. Let's start moving forward to make a difference in this community, because I am so tired of people saying, I want to be like Nashville, I want to be like Indianapolis. Let's be the leader and let them follow us. Let's take what they have and make it better. Let's be the Louisville that Louisville can be in the future.
First, I want to say thank you to my wife. She's not here, Shelby Hall, and my children. because I wouldn't be able to do this without their support. Thank you to my team that's here. Charlie Bell, she's running for Metro Council District 1. Kim Moore, George Kimbrough Jr., running for School Board District 5. And Jawan Rivers, my videographer. And Caitlin Hall, my brother. I just want to say thank you to them. I'm so appreciative. Thank you to all of you for being here, for listening to us, for understanding the importance of this, because it's what it truly takes is the city. And as the next mayor, you truly have to love, and not just say that you do, but you have to show that with everything in your being from that office and be visible, not just in Frankfurt, not just doing policies, not writing bills. That's going to take, but you have to be seen. We need someone real. We need a new face, a breath of fresh air. We need a young energy that can come in and revamp. No, I don't have experience, right? Mayor Bill didn't have experience before he became mayor of J-Town. So where does it start? And I'm only using them as an example because I understand you have to start somewhere. And what we need right now is someone strong, bold, and courageous that's going to make the tough decisions to move the city forward and bridge this divide.
I want to thank again Simmons and the Courier-Journal and all of you for being here this evening for these important topics. And more than just asking for your vote, I ask for your trust. I think that the single accomplishment that I can walk away from as being mayor is saying that I restore trust in our city. Our community, when you go talk with them, they don't trust the police. When you go talk to the police, they don't trust the mayor. When you talk to the other people, it's a lack of trust everywhere. There's a crisis of confused authority. And when you have authority that's confused, when you have trust, then everything is done just out of just reaction. And I think that's a very bad thing that has to happen. So in closing, what I want to do is talk to the 70% that are maybe listening to this recording live or later on and say, I know that you're bothered because of politics don't seem to change. It seems like everything is going to be the same. Doesn't matter who comes into office. I just want to say, give a chance to this time. Go out and vote. Go out and make a difference with your vote. Go out and get out there and make a difference, because this is a different time and we have different things that are going to happen. And I attain, again, to bring trust to the office of the mayor.
Yeah, and this office does need trust, and it also needs someone that's actually going to do something. You know, the mayor that we have currently, you know, he's not doing anything. He's not willing to go out. He's not willing to speak out. And so I think that that's a huge thing. And I don't think that we need necessarily a politician that's already been a politician, because we've seen where that's gotten us. You know, the city is where it is because of politicians. You know, a lot of us don't have any political ego, and we don't have, you know, anything that we're trying to prove other than we need to change, and that's why we're doing this. We're doing it for our families. We're doing it for Louisville. We're doing it for the love, because you don't get paid for this. I mean, I've got 3 kids, and I've got my wife. She doesn't even want me to do this, so you know, it takes time out, you know, but we can get the right people in to actually do something. We'll actually be there, and we will fight for the city. So, you know, we care about the city. I know that every one of us care about the city right now, so just go out and vote for sure.
Thank you. And thank you so much to our candidates. Thank you to our panel and to our timekeeper. Thank you to Simmons College. Thank you to all of you who are here in person and to those who are watching on Courier-Journal.com. We appreciate you. Thank you, and have a good evening. And please stay tuned, because our next forum starts at 6:30, and it will feature the Democratic candidates for mayor. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Courier-Journal, Simmons College, Louisville Mayoral Forum. My name is Vita Morgan, and I am the Director of Engagement and Diversity at the Courier-Journal. This is our second forum this evening, featuring the Democrats running for Louisville mayor. They are, to my left, Tim Finley Jr., pastor of Kingdom Fellowship Christian Life Center; Skylar Grodick, a construction and maintenance worker; Craig Greenberg, former CEO of 21C Museum Hotels and co-owner of Ohio Valley Wrestling; and to my right, Colin Hardin, who works in the hospitality and food service industry; David L. Nicholson, Jefferson County Circuit Court Clerk; and Shamika Parrish Wright, Partnerships and Advocacy Manager with the Bell Project. Welcome. Our panelists who will be questioning the candidates are Ben Tobin, Courier-Journal business reporter; Jalen Montgomery Lewis, a sociology major at Simmons College; Joe Girth, the Courier-Journal's Metro columnist; and our very important timekeeper is Bailey Loosemore, engagement reporter at the Courier-Journal. Under our format this evening, each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each question from the panel. After our second round of questions, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask one other candidate a question. They will have 30 seconds to ask that question, and that candidate will have up to 2 minutes to respond. If time permits, at the end of questioning this evening, we will have a few rapid-fire questions, which will require a one-word answer or an answer of 30 seconds or less. And then at the end, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. It is important that each candidate stick to the time limits. Our timekeeper will help you do that. When you have 30 seconds left, she will raise her paddle displaying 30. When your time is up, she will display the red side of the paddle. If you continue talking, I will cut you off, in a nice way, of course. Now, let's get started with our first question from Ben Tobin.
So we'll start with Mr. Finley, and then we'll go to your right from there. What would you do to bring better paying jobs and more businesses to all of Louisville?
Well, I've already announced a plan that identifies 10 economic drivers for income, job, business growth, and retention in Louisville, but I'll highlight just 2 of them. As it relates to income and jobs and workforce development, and first let me stop. Thank you, Courier-Journal. Thank you, Dr. Cosby. Thank you to Simmons. And I hope that we can get more of the American Rescue money here to Simmons College because they deserve it. So again, we would establish a worker relations director to focus on worker pay and wages, benefits, wage theft, worker safety, bargaining, etc. Give that department the power to fine, like code enforcement, fines to go to workers. I believe that we could bring $15 to $20 minimum wage for city employees, a livable wage that would raise the bar for other employers in Louisville. Another thing, I would build on another successful citizen-led mechanism, which is the JCPS academics pathways, like Jefferson Technical College, Simmons, Spalding, U of L, with companies throughout Kentuckiana, Kentuckiana Works, GLI. There's an effort that is working, and I think that if we do this, we can achieve the success that we all want to see here in Louisville. Again, there are people on the ground right now doing an amazing job. I believe they just need to be brought to the table and hear those voices and not simply parse out the information to other individuals.
Thank you, Mr. Grodick.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, Simmons College and the Courier-Journal. I subscribe to them. They've let me write a number of opinion pieces, and I've gotten to know some of the reporters. So support your local journalism, keep government honest, and donate to their high-quality reporting. So I am a construction and maintenance worker, but a large part of my background that I'm going to refer to a lot tonight, most likely, is I was a police officer with the Louisville Metro Police Department for 6 years. I was a union lobbyist for the Kentucky State Fraternal Order Police. During my time there, we fought the Bev administration's attacks on workers and pensions, and so I'm a big supporter from a construction background for skilled labor and unskilled labor alike. To your point, and to the point I just made, I think that we have a lot of good paying jobs here potentially, but under my administration, I would be a mayor that supports unions and union rights and union benefits, both in the public and private sector. So I'm a strong supporter of the First Amendment. So under my administration, all public workers, and I believe private workers, especially those professions who have been politicized, should have the right to criticize their management and talk about what it's really like. I believe that there's no one better than the workers themselves to advocate for the wages, benefits, and working conditions that will make them prosperous and contribute to the betterment of their job. So if we can have all the jobs we want, but if they're kind of heavy-handed from the corporate level and they don't support their workers, there's going to be a lot of jobs potentially that could be good paying, but they're simply not.
Mr. Greenberg?
Good evening, everyone, and thanks to the Courier-Journal and Simmons College for having us, all of us here this evening. It's especially great to be here at Simmons College, where, as Dr. Cosby has heard me say many times before, as we seek to make Louisville a college town, we need to make sure that it's a Simmons college town, and that all of us across the community continue to support Simmons, along with other important educational institutions across the whole city. I hope we have a chance to talk about education later this evening. In terms of creating local businesses, that has to be a key priority, not just for the city government, but for everyone who cares about the future of Louisville. And so my view is that for too many years, Louisville has sought to recruit out-of-town businesses, those shiny Fortune 500 headquarters that usually have not relocated to Louisville. While we need to do that when there's a unique opportunity in one of our sectors like bourbon or logistics or healthcare that makes sense to recruit to Louisville, we should really spend most of our time focused on local businesses that are currently here, on big and small businesses, and ask them what they need to do to create jobs, to expand here, to create better paying jobs here. Also working with local unions on apprenticeship programs and workforce training, attracting people who want to work remotely in the new world that we have following the pandemic. And finally, we need to work very closely with our Black community to create more Black-owned businesses, support a Black-owned bank, and our new American community who need some support to also create new businesses here in Louisville.
Mr. Harden?
Thank you for having me tonight. It's an honor to be here. The full extent of my administration will lobby Frankfurt to submission to get this legalized marijuana passed. Because with that would come not only, the no more prosecution of people that's simply smoking weed, but also the cultivation of hemp. And hemp can do all kinds of wondrous things, but most of all, it could replace plastic full scale across the nation. I mean, we all seen the current climate that we're in, and it's not good. We have to take steps now to do something about it. Not only would that give us an export to all 50 states, but it would also set up an entirely new industry to bring billions of dollars of revenue to the state of Kentucky. I mean, if the state, there's nothing but a net benefit from the legalization of marijuana. And with that, we could also have a net benefit to our carbon emissions, as it absorbs 94% of carbon, and we could get rid of all the plastics. Like, I work in the service industry. We throw away a ridiculous amount of straws. It really is disturbing. But furthermore, there's a lot of houses and neighborhoods that are dilapidated and forgotten about. Now, affordable housing, buying new stuff, that's not the goal. It's restoration and rejuvenation. So with the help of local handymen, from electricians to plumbing and construction workers, we would double this as a diversion program for anybody that was getting caught for non-violent drug offenses, so they could restore and restaurate houses around the neighborhood.
Mr. Nicholson?
Thank you, and I want to certainly thank two of our most important historical institutions, Simmons College and the Courier-Journal, for bringing this to our audience and our fellow citizens tonight. One thing that we can certainly learn from the pandemic is what the workforce is going to look like tomorrow. That I believe that our workforce of tomorrow is now wanting to look at a more life-work balance. And we must be prepared to offer that as a community, as a fabric of neighborhoods, to allow the local businesses the opportunity to grow, to reinvest in their neighborhoods, but we must be attracting those new opportunities. That comes back, though, public safety. Until we restore public safety in this community, we cannot attract nor retain new opportunities. One thing that the next mayor must do, and I pledge to you under my administration, is an active mayor that will be out calling on the businesses, seeing firsthand where and how they are working and prospering or not prospering, so that we can address those timely and be supportive. And with that, other opportunities will come to Louisville because they talk, CEOs talk among themselves.
And Ms. Parrish-Wright.
Good evening. I too want to thank Simmons College, the Courier-Journal, all the guests here, the media, production, and the moderators for having us here. This is a very important opportunity to connect to voters, for them to see the real choices they have as the path forward for Louisville. What I would do is what I'm already doing and what I've been doing with my campaign, as we have not only, we pay a livable wage, we have over 34 people that are part of our team, and everyone that is paid makes $25 an hour as a livable wage. We've also had community meetings and groups and events where we've helped almost 40 people start their own businesses and nonprofits in partnership with groups like Keys to KY and other groups. So we've been working with smaller businesses all over the city, in Old Louisville, in every part of Louisville, and we've been giving our campaign money back to Louisville, to the communities in that way. But there are thousands and thousands of people all over the city, and especially in the West End and other low-income neighborhoods, who need good jobs and who are ready to work on good jobs. At the same time, climate change is lending to more intense heat waves, wildfires, droughts, and flooding. So I think our path forward is making sure we have climate change actions right now. Every year, our administration will not only work to improve our buildings in the city and make them more energy efficient, but making sure that we put people to work in doing those jobs and create the comfortable city that we all want. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, Ms. Jaylin.
All righty. We are seeing more guns and violence in our communities, sometimes involving mental illness. What is the #1 policy you would change or implement to combat gun violence? We are going to start with Mr. Grodger, and then we're going to go right.
Thank you. I will also say that I'm for the full legalization of marijuana and using tax revenue to expunge nonviolent offenses free of charge. So I was a former police officer of the Louisville Metro Police Department, and I know I was also a union member and lobbyist. And I would just have to say that there's a lot of going to be rude awakenings for candidates in this race who don't have a former law enforcement background, because the actual nature of policing in the city is something that is not talked about. One of those things is there's a lot of talk about relative budget sizes. There's a lot of talk about officer training. The fact is that we have a mayor that does not support his police officers. We have officers doing life-risking work, and they're getting punished for it. So you could triple the size of the police department, but if the mayor's office is not going to support those officers, they're not going to be able to go out there and be proactive and get the guns off the street. The other problem has nothing to do with the police department. The police might make the arrest, but it's the judges who actually enforce the laws. And if we have judges who will not keep criminals in jail, the police are going to go out there and arrest the same people over and over again. It's not a large percentage of our population that does most of the violence. It's an extremely small one that gets slapped on the wrist over and over again and learns that they can get away with killing people and shooting people and not have any consequences, because that's exactly what our system does. We also need more upstream solutions. Those are downstream solutions. I am for after-school programs for all of our schools' youth, because people don't realize that there's another horrific level to the shootings, which is that it's being done by young kids. So let's give them a safe place to stay instead of on the streets.
To me, public safety is the #1 issue facing our community. Last year, we had nearly 200 homicides in this city. Hundreds of more people were shot and injured by gun violence, and thousands of families were impacted. This year already, 46 Louisvillians have been killed by gun violence. That is 46 people too many. So this is my #1 priority as a citizen, as a candidate, and as hopefully your next mayor. And to answer the question, the #1 thing, the first thing I will do is ensure that we fully fund our police force, so that we have a police force that is focused on community policing, that can prevent crimes, and solve crimes so that it is the best trained, the most trusted, and the most transparent police force in America. We as Louisvillians deserve nothing less. Preventing crime is critically important, and also solving. Last year, nearly 2/3 of our homicides went unsolved. And so we need to solve those crimes to not just put the folks who committed those heinous acts in jail, but also prevent additional crimes from happening. Yet at the same time, we cannot simply police our way to safety. As you mentioned, Jalen, in the question, we need to provide more mental health services for people so that they get the help they need before they commit crimes. We need to invest in programs like group violence intervention to address the folks that are most at risk of committing violent crimes. And ultimately, the long-term solution is investing in the root causes of poverty.
Mr. Go ahead.
The reprioritization of the police department's focus from being on drugs to violent crime. We have task force, we have, all the police do is basically focus on drugs. And that's a problem. We have violent crime in this city that we need to focus on. All the DA tasks force, all the drug and the narcs, they will all be reprioritized and aimed at the violent crime in the city. That is not taken seriously. As Skylar said, I mean, it is slap on the wrist, but, don't get caught with, some heroin you're doing 10, 15 years. That's antithetical to making the city safer. All you do is you then put somebody in a system that houses violent people, and it perpetuates the state of violence. Under my administration, we will have safety to think about. And of course, the Second Amendment to consider as well. And since the Second Amendment enshrines our right to weaponry, it's time that we teach people how to use them. Under my administration, through local law enforcement, citizens, gun owners, non-gun owners alike will be trained in threat management and assessment and even engagement in any, should, God forbid, a mass shooting or injury, anything like that occur. Also, the police department, they will be, because cops don't feel safe. Who can with all the mixed martial arts and stuff out there? They will have mandatory training in jiu-jitsu and judo paid for by the city, so the cops feel safe enough to engage in these situations, and the gun not be their lifeline.
Mr. Nicholson?
On day one, September 2nd, 2021, I announced that I wanted to be your mayor. At that time, I also announced a strategy on that day that I would bring about neighborhood-based policing, an Office of Victim Services, a civilian police commissioner, fatality review commission, which has been very successful in reviewing domestic violence fatalities, and a citizens commission on corrections accountability. Now, in order for Louisville to grow and prosper, without a solid foundation of public safety, I know from my many decades of criminal justice experience, all aspects of the criminal justice system, that restoring safety to all Louisville neighborhoods and creating long-lasting changes requires collaboration. I am a collaborator. You have to do that with neighborhood leaders, business owners, the ministers, Metro Council members, and the local, state, and federal government. So as mayor, I will work in a bipartisan manner to identify and stop those committing the violent crimes. I will support and invest in proven programs to reduce our record level of violence and homicides, like the GVI, the Group Violence Intervention, that focuses on a small number of the individuals in streets, in the groups who are driving the majority of our violence. Thank you.
I feel like Mr. Nicholson read my notes over here. I literally have taken notes. But as the first candidate to announce her intentions to run for mayor in January of 2021, with the first website that outlined my agenda for a people's agenda, I already outlined that safe neighborhoods and accountable policing is number one, support our schools, great government accountability, affordable housing. But I don't want to repeat what my opponents have said, but I want to do real things that are proven to work. Amnesty period for people who are dealing with gun violence and gun buybacks that really make sense. Safety and training for community leaders, community people, and actually putting those people to work. making sure that Dove Delegates, which is a great initiative that started in District 4, that is expanded to every district that want it. Actually, survival camps, teaching kids training, gun safety, all those things that are missing from our community. Mobile trauma response units, I've asked for that even when I lived in the Parkland community, to have those units come in and educate people on conflict resolution, training, ways to deal with it. I survived gun violence. I survived a lot of adverse childhood experiences because faith community reached out to me, because I had education, and those opportunities need to be for every one of our children, including our immigrant youth, putting them to work. They're often the translators for their family, having things for them to do. I'm famous for putting people to work, and since I got 30 seconds, you can go to shamikaparishwright.com where I've laid all of this out. Thank you.
If you go back and look at the last 3 mayoral races, you will see that we've been talking about public safety for some years. If you go back and listen to what's been spoken by these candidates, you will hear these answers for years. This is why when I laid out my public safety plan, I did not mention LMPD once, because I believe that Dr. King had it right, that a lot of the crime, a lot of the issues that we're seeing in marginalized, disinvested areas are because of a lack of economic impact. So I talked about a universal basic income. I talked about fair free transit. I talked about universal pre-K, and people were confused because they said, why in the world are you talking about economic things as it relates to public safety? Because in America and in Louisville, we want to pretend like what's going on in these areas is not an economic issue. That will not solve crime, but we have to start. What you're hearing today is the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Until we get to the root issue, which is economics, things are going to stay the same. We don't need to fully fund the police if we have not fully funded neighborhoods. We don't need to bring back programs if we're not dealing with the folks that are in place right now. If you go to my website, you will see all of this. It's not just made up today. There's a plan, an actual plan to get this done. That's the new Louisville that we need to live in, and it's safer.
Thank you. Now it's time for the candidates to ask the questions. You can ask one question of anyone here, and you have 30 seconds to ask that question, and that person will have 2 minutes to answer. We will start with Ms. Shamika Parrish-Wright.
Oh, I get to go first. Is it just one candidate at a time? All right, I'll ask Mr. Nicholson. What does your neighborhood have? I was in Anchorage and noticed that it was beautiful, it had a bunch of things, and I said every community wants this in Louisville. What does your neighborhood have that the South, some of the neighborhoods in the South End and the West End don't have?
Well,
It's loaded.
it is loaded. And as I look at, and I no longer live in Anchorage, but as I did grow up in that community, it did have a sense of a neighborhood. And it is beautiful, just as many of our neighborhoods, as I have walked in Park Duval and I see the beauty there, I see the beauty in Audubon Park, having just walked that this last weekend. So as I look at our neighborhoods, you've heard me many occasions say we're a fabric of neighborhoods, that it's about our people. And our people, all of us want a better tomorrow than we have today. And I think that's the reason each one of these candidates, we're here. We're saying to our community that we care about. Give us an opportunity to lead. And that's what I've always tried to do, is listen, learn, and then lead.
Appreciate that.
Thank
But
you.
they're not over-policed either. I just want to give you that answer.
Oh, I don't know. You don't know the Anchorage Police Department.
I met them. They said they had 2 24-hour police officers for their whole area.
They're pretty tough.
Mr. Nicholson, you're next. You can ask a question to
Okay,
any.
well, I'll direct this to Mr. Finley, if I may.
I knew it was coming.
Now, this Friday, we are going to celebrate the 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson's integration of Major League Baseball. And Jackie Robinson and our very own Pee Wee Reese were close friends, and they played on the Brooklyn Dodgers together. So in that spirit, I want to ask you, if I'm lucky enough to be elected mayor, will you work closely with me to mend the racial divide in our community?
Absolutely. And not only will I do that, I've been doing that for the last 15 to 20 years as a pastor, as a community leader. I believe that James Baldwin had it right, that you cannot fix what you will not face. So in going forward in unity, I know that I can count on you, that we can face some very difficult things as we move forward.
Thank you, absolutely.
All right. Mr. Harden, your question?
Can I ask a yes or no question just to everybody?
Yeah, as long as it's
Yeah,
within
just
2
yes or no.
minutes.
Okay. So, being a leader is to lead by example. That's how I've always felt. And, no sacrifice, no victory. So, the priorities here are very skewed in our political system. And as such, I'm going to make a gesture. The median living wage in Kentucky is $40,000, and the mayor's salary is $120,000. I'm prepared to pledge half of my salary each year of mayor to nonprofits and local charities as both an example and a commitment to community. If you're up here for money in this job, then it's not for you. This is not a celebrity. This is for a public servant. So, will any of you match that offer?
No, that's performative.
Maybe.
I would say that if the average Louisvillian, it's much less than that, but the average person gets about 60 grand a year, then the mayor should get that as well. I would say yes.
I like that. I like your style, Skyler.
I'm not prepared to make that commitment this time.
Okay.
Now, I've been honored to serve in public service and have always supported our nonprofits in this community and served on their boards and will continue to support our local nonprofits, but no.
I think our police chief is the highest paid person in Louisville Metro, and I would work to bring her salary down, but also I'm raising 2 boys still, so I can do $100,000 and split the rest with nonprofits.
Thank you. Mr. Greenberg.
Thank you. Skylar, you're unique among us. You have recently served on LMPD. In your last answer on public safety, you spoke about training for officers. And I think my guess is we all agree that we would want the best trained police force, one that's focused on that has the ample resources for training. With your experiences, what areas of training can we provide better to LMPD so that they are the best trained police force?
Sure, that's an excellent question, thank you. So let me point this out first. Many people don't realize this, but before Chief Conrad made cuts and before Chief Shield made more cuts, there's a lot of police officers who have some of the best police training in the nation come from LMPD, both in terms of hours of the academy and in terms of continuing training, which is called CLEP, which requires every police officer in Kentucky to get 40 hours of additional training each year. There's only a few police departments across the country that do that, so we have to start from a position of that. Now, this is kind of an interesting question because oftentimes the training that police officers are most lacking in that create the most liability to the city, the most danger to the public, the most danger to officers themselves, might not necessarily be training that the public would be comfortable with supporting. That's the catch-22. That includes use of firearms training and driver's training, crashing into people. We need a new track. Mayor Abramson sold our track. Is that something that the public would want to be invested in? If they really do want to create better outcomes as far as interaction with the police go, we need that. Shooting training. I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment. I own a lot of guns. I like to teach people how to shoot. The academy gave good training, but it was very quick. Also, people don't realize that the training range doesn't allow officers to really practice their weapons there. When I was training, because I like to shoot and because I think it's important, I spent a lot of money out of my own pocket to train with my firearm and be proficient. So that's kind of the conundrum, is if we want to have the best trained police department, we have to address the areas that police are most liable for, that pose the most danger to the public. Are those areas that the public is actually going to want to say, let's spend more money on those things?
Thank you.
Mr. Grodd, your question?
My question is for Mr. Greenberg. So So with all respect to Judge Nicholson, who's associated with the Kentucky Association of Counties, with all respect to Mayor DeRiff, who's associated with the Kentucky League of Cities. When I was a lobbyist in Frankfort, fighting for union rights, fighting for workers' rights and benefits, it seemed like there was the Kentucky Association of Counties, the Kentucky League of Cities, and the Chamber of Commerce all on one side, and everyone else in Kentucky on the other side. And they're not shy about it. They were behind, say, the income tax reduction that's going to leave huge holes in our services. When I was a lobbyist up there, we had a small team of lobbyists. The Chamber of Commerce had local lobbyists and huge teams of lobbyists. Mayor Fisher only had one lobbyist for the city of Louisville. And so he was almost tacitly giving consent to the
Mr.
policies
Grada, can
that
you
were there.
ask your
So my question is, will you stand up to these organizations for the working people of Kentucky, given your kind of business associations?
Absolutely, great question. I am very proud to have been endorsed by 8 labor unions so far in this campaign. Folks from the laborers, Teamsters, and many others, the firefighters, ATU, which is the TARC transit workers, and many others. I believe strongly in creating good-paying career path jobs for people, regardless of their educational background, regardless of their life experiences and when they come. That is the key to the future of Louisville. I believe in investing in additional educational opportunities and not just making it a norm that everyone has to go to a 4-year college to succeed. To me, it's about investing in people that have been overlooked and neglected for our entire lifetime. And so, yes, I will work with organized labor. I will work with anyone in this city that wants to be a part of the solution. And I think it's also important to collaborate. While right now we need to be cognizant of the fact that in all likelihood, the state legislature will continue to be controlled by Republicans for the duration of the next mayoral term. We need to find ways to work with them regardless of the difference of political party so we can get state support and state laws passed that benefits the citizens of Louisville so that we can be a safer, stronger, and healthier city.
I have a yes or no question for each candidate. In 2021, Mayor Fisher signed a resolution to study reparations. If I become mayor, when I become mayor, I will take that a step further and form a commission to put a strategy in place to see reparations a reality here in Louisville. My question is, for each candidate, do you support reparations for American descendants of slaves in Louisville?
We have 30 seconds, correct?
Yes or no?
No, and the reason is because I believe I don't want to divide any more people on the basis of race. I think there are a lot of races and there are a lot of people. For instance, I patrolled an area that was heavily Vietnamese. There's a lot. I believe the issue is class and not race, and I think that creates a lot broader coalition to get everyone on the table to get where we need to get as far as neglected and underinvested in communities without creating barriers to that cooperation based on skin color.
So no to reparations for
Yes,
American
that's
descendants
correct.
of slaves. Okay.
I believe that this is an important issue the federal government should address. And as mayor, I will work to do everything possible to close the wealth gap between black people in Louisville and white people in Louisville. And there's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that the city government has right now using American Rescue Plan funds to invest in community and put people, particularly black people, that have been overlooked and neglected for our entire lifetime.
Is that a yes or a no?
I think I answered your question, Tim.
Yes or no?
No. Because speaking of the ARP money, Simmons has not received, so that would be
Speak
an
And as
issue
Dr.
too.
Cosby knows, I'm a strong supporter of using ARP money to build student housing for Simmons College. That's the type of investment that the mayor should take a lead on, and that's the type of investment that I will take the lead on if I'm elected as the next mayor of Louisville.
Mr. Harden?
So going forward, I do believe everybody should treat everyone the same, but there is a lot of stuff to make up for. Redlining is just the least of it. So yes, of course, I will support reparations. Because if you don't support reparations, don't support inheritance. Because that's all it is inheritance that have been denied to communities. So if you're against reparations, you should be against inheritance.
Well, I clearly recognize that the issue of reparation is complicated and very controversial. I do support the U.S. House Resolution 40, recently advanced out of the House Judiciary Committee, calls for the creation of a federal commission to study the institutional and cultural impacts of slavery and reparation. So I think the good thing in the last 2 years, the conversation clearly is centered around the inequity and racial justice front and center in this community, and I think it's very timely. So the study, to me, it's on the legislative level, and I will certainly, again, listen, learn, and lead.
Thank you.
Short answer, yes. And if you watched Pastor Finley and I, we had a debate on the Revolutionary Black Panther Party. It's online. We talk about this, but I don't think that reparations is going to solve our economic disparities by itself. There's many forms of reparations, but I fully support it. We don't need another study. Let's figure it out, and I'll do what I can as mayor to support it.
Thank you. And now we'll move back to our panelist questions. Mr. Joe Girth.
Okay, Mr. Greenberg, this one's coming at you first, and then we'll go on down. Education, of course, is a huge issue, not just here but everywhere. But do you believe that the city government, Louisville Metro government, should take a bigger role in helping Jefferson County schools reach their goals, reform the schools, fix the schools that are broken?
Absolutely, yes. On the day I announced I was running for office, I announced that I would create Louisville's first Department of Education, because I think education is critical to the future of the city. That doesn't mean it's going to replace any one of the great educational institutions that we have here in Louisville, but what it's going to do, it is going to be a strong advocate for improved education. It is going to be the city office that works with the nonprofit sector, the philanthropic community, not just in Louisville, but around the country, to bring universal pre-K here to Louisville for all 3- and 4-year-olds so that every child has an opportunity to succeed. It's going to work with JCPS, Simmons College, Spalding, U of L, and others on workforce training so that people are getting trained in the right skills to have good paying career path jobs. There's so much the city government can do to advocate for improved education across the entire city. It's also going to work with JCPS on developing community schools. So when there are new schools built, like there are slated for in the West End right now, the city will work with them so that they're designed in a way that the gymnasiums can be used by the neighborhoods. There will be a healthcare center that's not just serving the kids, but also the neighborhoods, so that the computer lab is available at nights and on weekends. There is so much the city can do to help make Louisville have an even better education system for all kids. And as mayor, that's something I'm excited to take the lead on.
So property tax funds the schools in their vicinity, and this only exacerbates the inequality and restricts students to furthermore their communities and doesn't let them see anything. It keeps them in their place, which isn't much different than our communities have been segregated to do. That is lunacy. Under my administration, all property tax of Louisville Metro will fund all Louisville Metro schools, period. There's none of this East End has better property taxes, so their schools get better equipment. That's illogical. We are one tribe, and it's time we start acting like it. So that's going to be my biggest step that Louisville get in. Just easy enough, when you work together, when somebody's doing bad, somebody else has to pick up the slacks. It won't always be like this, but we've gotten way too into this individual mind state that like I'm the only one that matters, and you. It's not in that regard. If you're so concerned with you forget about us, in the U.S. and that's what's happened. And so while people sit here and they go at schools and should the government have a bigger role in schools? Absolutely, they absolutely should. Why wouldn't they? I mean, school is foundational to having a solid, strong country. And instead of teaching people what we want, we let some neighborhoods just deteriorate over and over and over, keeping it perpetuated in a cycle. No more. So all the property tax will fund all the schools.
No, I will not. We already have a school board that is elected by the voters of Jefferson County. And the fact is, the mayor must be focused on public safety, neighborhoods, because if we don't focus on public safety and economic development for this community, we're going to suffer for years to come, which will have a profound impact on the graduating students and their future in this community. I will, and having served under 2 mayors and 2 county judges and witnessing firsthand their relationship with our public schools, I will have ongoing quarterly meetings at a minimum with the JCPS elected board members and the superintendent to foster a collaborative partnership on all issues that face our public school system. I'm committed to doing everything I can to offer a fair and inclusive education for all of Jefferson County students. And I do believe currently Superintendent Marty Polio is moving in the right direction, and he has my support, and I think he deserves the time to turn our public schools around.
Okay, yes, I want to do everything I can as mayor. I make sure that my actions match my words. I actually ran for school board in 2019, and now one of the school board members loves my campaign so much and is my campaign manager, Chris Cole. But I will tell you, right here on this door hanger that you might see coming near you, it says, support our schools and keep JCPS under local control. Over 70 years ago, mayors had a stronger hold on what our public school system did, and we are clearly not in a place to take over that. We're in a place to be a supportive role, to offer resources, and Metro government is not doing nearly enough to support our kids and teachers in JCPS. So my administration will change that. Let's start by recognizing that our schools are under attack by Republicans in Frankfurt. Let's call it what it is. They're under attack by wealthy elite. They're under attack by the Walton family, who one of my opponents has taken 5 donations he did not need from. We got to make sure that we are focused and investing in our city at all means. And so when people take that much money, you have to wonder who's pulling the strings. No one will pull our strings but our students and our teachers and the JCPS staff. Thank you.
I think that a lot of the problems that we see in JCPS resemble a lot of the issues that we see in the city. So I would probably echo what Mr. Nicholson has said. I think if we can begin to clean up what we're seeing in the city, I don't think that we have to create a new department. I don't think that we have to bring about a new branch of Metro government, but I do think that every single city department should operate with an equity lens to help the highest needs of schools. I believe that that starts with city government, that's TARC, that is making sure that Louisville does not remain one of the top 5 most segregated cities in America. I believe in fixing those issues. What we do in the city is that we see an issue and we run in to take control and create something new instead of fixing what's in place right now. I believe if we do that, we don't need another department and expanding government. What we need to do is work with JCPS, but do our part and fix the streets, tear down some of these divides that are causing us to be completely segregated. And if we do that, we'll see our school system. I agree that Mr. Polio is doing a great job. I would support him, and I would fight against Frankfurt, who has waged a war on Louisville.
All right.
To answer the question directly, I would say absolutely, but that relationship need not be adversarial or interfere with the board. I think we can do a lot to cooperate. Like I said, I would be a mayor that would be a champion of unions. So the Jefferson County Teachers Association and the Kentucky Education Association, I would give them support in Frankfurt to express what it's like to actually be teachers and advocate for their wages, benefits, and working conditions. If you have any friends that are teachers, they'll tell you it's very difficult. A lot of the hooks that were there for public employees like police, teachers, and firefighters affects teachers as well. They no longer have a pension system. They no longer have good insurance. So people get into those public service jobs because their heart is in it, but it has to pay. It has to pay. It has to support their families. It's a very hard job. They need a lot of reasons to stay in it. The pension's a big one, and that was taken away. I would be for bringing back defined benefit pension systems. Also, we don't need to have this dichotomous relationship with the police either. So we have a lot of kids bringing guns to schools. That's scary for teachers. That's scary for their parents. But we also, I believe we can have police officers in schools protecting our kids from that, and also from active shooters from outside the community, and let the kids talk to police officers, let them break down barriers. The police need not be just someone who's going to arrest a bad kid. I believe having police officers in schools is a good thing because it allows them to interact with kids, and we can define their mission however we like. So those are 2 ways I would support through the government, not in an adversarial way, supporting the unions and supporting our police officers and what our parents want to see with their children.
Thank you. Next question.
Alrighty, this question is going to start with you, Mr. Harden, and then it's going to work our way down to Mr. Nicholson. Will combating racial inequality be a priority in your administration? And if so, what policies would you enact that you think would be the biggest impact?
So, yes, of course, racial inequality will be something my administration tackles, rights that need to be wronged. But the race inequality is only part of the overall inequality, which is equality of the working class. I mean, black people suffer from it just as much as white people do at this point. So, along with my reprioritizing the police to no longer arrest people for drugs and focus on violent crimes, the people in jail and drugs will offer diversion programs so that they can get out and learn a trade. Trades like restoration, building, like plumbing, electrician, things like that. Now, once we stop the police from policing black neighborhoods for nonviolent drugs, and we get them out of the communities themselves will begin to heal. They won't have the constant threat around them at all times. And as by lifting the working class, it's going to lift the black class just as much. Like, think about it. The inequality wasn't there 60 years ago. I mean, and during the 60s, black people made money, white people make money. But then the attack on the working class is what then brought us to where we're at now. So the status quo of, only put money into one side of things has got us nowhere. Whether it's, white people or black people, skin color matters as much as hair color, eye color. And while we have to make up for some things, that's how I would do it.
Well, a city's ability to attract and keep talent should be one of Louisville's top economic goals and should start with inclusion and diversity, and it must be intentional and action-driven. So I'm proud to say that one of my very first goals after I was elected Circuit Court Clerk was to diversify our staff of over 300 team members. We now have one of the most diverse government offices in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. For generations, government and institutional policies, practices have excluded many individuals from opportunities to follow their dreams. So many of these institutional policies created outcomes of lower education attainment, lack of training, and few career opportunities. So we must make inclusion part of our economic development discussion and mission. It starts with improving equity and inclusion in the hiring practices, education, career training, addressing the needs of individuals outside the workplace setting. And it might include and has to include the transportation, childcare, affordable housing, like we did with Riverport and affordable housing. We have to track businesses, though, that are created and committed to the opportunity in an equitable fashion. Bottom line is inclusion diversity should be a critical ingredient in the plan. My administration will have an action plan of diversity in all of the Louisville Metro contracts and incentive packages that this city might offer to developers.
So the reason why I'm running is so that we don't get more of the same. I respect Mr. Nicholson. I have to work with Mr. Nicholson in my professional career. But also personally, there's people on Mr. Nicholson's staff who's been there more than 20 years who have been suspended for racist actions, racist words, and people who get government assistance because they're not paid well. So when we talk about diverse and accountability, I am the only candidate that's been working on that for over 25 years in the nonprofit sector. I plan to have a transition team and an accountability team throughout my term to check in every month and quarterly to make sure we're meeting our racial equity plans. I'm tired of all the talk and what sounds good on TV, but what plays out when you work in those places and when you have to access those places for resources is something totally different. I'm also running because I want to get in and stop the nepotism that is happening and has corrupted our city, and that continues to do that as people are trying to buy their way into our mayor's seat. It is time for a people's mayor that's going to bring those changes. No more of this one-dimensional leadership where it's about who you know or who your grandfather is. It's about the work you're putting in. Anybody that wants to keep their job should be able to show how they're enacting the racial equity plans quarterly and monthly in hiring practices and the way that we pay people. We have to take care of people, and we have to represent the whole community. I mean no disrespect, but this old way of doing it has to go. Thank you.
Well, I want to answer the question directly, but first make sure that all the candidates understand that racial inequity is synonymous with fairness and justice. You cannot have fairness and justice if you don't correct the things that are causing injustice and unfairness. So the first thing we have to do if we're going to have a more racially equitable city is we have to reorganize the way Louisville Metro works. Under my administration, I will reorganize not only the flow chart, I will make sure that every single department is operating with an equitable lens. It starts there. I will make sure that every initiative that is coming out of Metro government is operated with an equitable lens. I will make sure that we identify patterns and practices that have historically marginalized neighborhoods, people, and communities. If we don't do that, all we're doing is talking. So the very first day, I will sit down with my team, my transition team that will stay on throughout the first year or so of my administration, and we will look through the entire flow chart with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that every department is operating with this equitable lens. If we do not do that, we're going to simply do what we've been doing for the last 20-plus years.
So we spent $110 million of taxpayer money to build the Omni. We spent $10 million on the Marriott, and we also created a tax increment finance district to where when things turned down in the pandemic, we actually owe money on those things, public dollars. If we can build stadiums, if we can build hotels, if we can build all of those things, then it shows that we don't have a money or know-how problem in terms of construction. We have a priorities problem. And I'm tired of this city using public dollars to invest and try to attract tourists instead of investing in its own people. For $10 million, we could have had free TARC. That's how much it costs to fund TARC fairs. I mean, make it fare free. So we could have had 10 years or more of free TARC if we hadn't invested in the Omni. One of my main campaign platforms is to end food deserts. Again, to Tim Finley's question to us, I don't like to focus on race specifically because I think it's divisive, but we can't deny that we do have a history of systemic racism and Jim Crow and redlining that's hurt our community. So there's a correlation between race and class, but it's very clear, regardless of that we have some underinvested in areas. If you have to spend more to go to get less healthy food and drive longer, you're paying more as a person who lives in that community. You're not getting the benefits that everyone else has. So we're more than Frankfurt Avenue, we're more than Bardstown Road, we're more than the Highlands. Let's take this know-how and take these dollars, which we have plenty of, both of those things, and start investing back into our communities that need it the most, who have been neglected.
I think we all agree that addressing racial inequity in this community, in this country, is long overdue. We need to close the wealth gap, we need to close the health gap, and as mayor, I expect to be accountable for doing both of those things. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity right now. $388 million is coming into the city from the federal government. Some of it's already been committed, but not all of it has been. We need to focus that on areas of this community, on people that have been overlooked due to systemic racism for my entire lifetime, for your entire lifetime. Investing in people, neighborhoods, and infrastructures, in ways that will close the wealth gap, that will close the health gap, and will address racial inequality. Things like housing, not just affordable rental housing, but also for sale housing, giving people opportunities to own homes and start creating generational wealth and to accumulate wealth for their families and also have a safe foundation to call home. Local grocery stores, healthcare facilities. We just had an announcement here in West Louisville about a new hospital, the first time in 100 years. That's great, but it's not enough. We can and must do more. We must ensure there's a black-led bank. We must support more black-led nonprofit organizations and foundations. We must invest in black entrepreneurs and black businesses, and we need to ensure universal pre-K is a reality so that every 3- and 4-year-old child, regardless of where they live, regardless of what their economic situation is, has an opportunity to get off to a great start in life.
Thank you. Mr. Girth?
And Mr. Nicholson will be coming to you here. The city is short tens of thousands of affordable housing units. It seems that quite often when we suggest that units be built outside of the West End, outside of the South End, we get pushback from different parts of the community. What will you do to make sure that affordable housing units are built throughout Louisville instead of just in a few certain areas?
Yeah, that's a very important question, and one that I'm proud of our local developer that announced yesterday about wanting to bring an additional 2,000 units online. But as we look at the $89 million that the American Rescue Plan funding that was proposed by Mayor Fisher, approved by Metro Council, yes, long overdue. It's a good start in addressing this issue on emergency affordable housing shortage. But we have to do more to be proactive, to remove the barriers to home ownership, address barriers to home ownership. We have to develop real solutions to help keep individuals in their homes. We must work to develop a real strategic plan that does not sit on the shelf as too many plans tend to do, sitting on the shelf on addressing the growth and sustainability of our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I'm committed to supporting that. I'm committed with my service on the National Association of Counties Board of Directors, working with our state and federal partners and the neighborhoods and business leaders. We certainly must preserve and rehab and retrofit existing housing and buildings to be used for affordable housing. So we look at incentives, but it has to start with the residents in the neighborhood of what they recognize where we can use and rehab and bring about an interest from all builders and investors, and tax credits. They must be transferable tax credits to really help us grow in this area.
Thank you. This is something I'm very passionate about, which is why I brought some talking points on this. We have to remove the red tape. Our metro government has a lot of red tape when it comes to affordable housing. But I was also a part of the Housing Action Team that helped bring the Affordable Housing Trust Fund about. I'm also on the Homeless Coalition Continuum of Care Board as the only person, and I sit on that board with some people who are developers and millionaires that has been directly impacted by houselessness. My family, my children graduated, some of my children graduated JCPS while we were houseless. So we have to do what we say we're going to do. We have to, I want to work with owners, with businesses, with Louisville Metro Housing Authority, developers to deal with our problem together, and we have to deal with the transparency and the red tape. And let me say this clearly. The only reason to create a TIF is to hide where taxpayer money is going. Everything you do in a TIF you can do through regular budgeting processes, which is done in full view of the public. I want transparency, and we deserve that now. A TIF often hides the most important elements of the budgeting process behind closed doors, where real estate developers, corporations, business ally elites, and others hide that from City Hall and to the fate of the neighborhoods that are impacted by those. And if I talk to somebody on Broadway and they can't tell me that something that has a 20-year implementation, they can't tell me anything about it, then that means this is not being done to help them. You simply cannot be for TIF and transparency at the same time. We have to have clear, true accountability for this, and we've had too much inaccountability. Thank you.
So I want to thank those who are asking the questions and how you all have somewhat deviated from what we had in our notes. So I'll answer what you just asked, and that is about the neighborhoods. We don't just have an affordable housing issue. All of us have plans for the amount of houses that we want to build. We're going to talk about AMI and how we get it done. But in Louisville, we don't just have an affordable housing issue. We have a segregated city issue. And you have neighborhoods that do not want affordable housing because of ignorance, because they don't know what affordable housing is. As the mayor, it is my job to go into those neighborhoods with city council leaders and work with developers in breaking down these antiquated, racist ideas that affordable housing brings more crime. That was the question. I'm planning on going into every single district with every city council member where affordable housing can happen and speak to residents who are rejecting this and have been rejecting this because of old school, antiquated, racist ideologies.
I'm going to take a slightly different tact, and for the record, I've been very clear in my questionnaires. I've taken this tact as well and publicly. We seem to focus on affordable housing in the sense, maybe because we think that we have control over developers and realtors and those kind of things more than we do over state law. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is people's ability to afford their homes. If you're elderly, and it comes down to a fixed income, if you're very poor, if you're elderly, retired, if you have a fixed income and your pension, if you do have a pension, and the cost of living allowance is not built into that, eventually you can have an affordable house that has a very low payment and you're going to get priced out of everything else that you need. Groceries go up with inflation. Let's take some bulwark here and build up some of our state laws so that we can address the other issues that, aren't necessarily housing. That's the biggest money dollar, so maybe that's why we focus on that. But let's have union jobs that allow people to have contracts that have cost of living adjustments built in. Let's look at that, because I looked at the numbers for the Affordable Housing Fund, and out of 30,000 or so houses that need to be built, they've only got to about 3,500 worked on or built in the last couple years. So it's not a good enough solution in itself, no matter where we build them. We need to address the root causes of making our dollars go further for those who are on a fixed income.
Tim, I'm going to follow your lead here, and I think I'm going to try to answer the question.
That's a
but
good
it's been
thing.
so long to me to make sure it was right. It's about affordable housing across the entire city. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I strongly support there being more affordable housing across our entire city. Near good-paying jobs, which are across our entire city, and near good public transportation, which must be improved hand in hand as more affordable housing is built across our entire city. This is one of these classic Louisville issues. We all know the problem, we all know the solution, but for far too long, no one has done anything about it. It is about time that we take action. And I've been a person of action my entire career, and as mayor, I'm excited to tackle this issue of affordable housing, to build 15,000 new affordable homes across all of Louisville during my first term. And not just affordable rental housing, but also for sale housing, and also, just as in the announcement yesterday with LDG, housing that also has additional services that the residents need, healthcare services, educational services. These would be great places to put new preschools and childcare under my universal pre-K program. So yes, affordable housing can, should, and must be built across this entire city.
So here's the problem with affordable housing. It's that it doesn't leave anybody with any assets. And there are, I looked the numbers up today, 5,000 empty houses, vacant, boarded up. I think I walked by one on the way here. And they're talking about building 15,000 more affordable houses. We only have 4,000 homeless people in the state. Like, we have everything we need right here. I'm not saying every house is salvageable, but, if those can be bulldozed and broke down, we're going to rejuvenate these neighborhoods. And with this, give these assets to the people that need them. We work out, payment plans, whatever, but money cannot be the first priority. Like, we got into this mess saving money. We're not going to get out of it saving money. Another reason that I put forth that pledge is, I'm not going to ask anybody to do something I wouldn't. So affordable housing is not the issue. It's the housing. It's the issue. And once we get these houses renovated and ready to go, people will have assets again. They'll actually have something to build wealth. And that's what majority black people, but now everybody's being denied. My entire generation is households. And that's the primary way that we build wealth in this country. And, just as it happened in the 40s and 50s to black people, it's happening to an entire generation now of people that are just like, what? We're supposed to rent our whole lives. I'm 34 years old. None of my friends own a home. None. And that's not because my generation just decided to be lazy. It's because every bit of money was siphoned from our communities by our so-called leaders.
Well said.
All right, Mr. Ben Tobin.
So we'll start with Ms. Parrish, right, with this one. What do you think is the most transformative improvement the city should make to its transportation system?
Oh, my favorite topic, and I didn't even have that note ready. Let me tell you. One, we spent a lot of money on bridges. I'm hearing over 20 years ago, we had a choice to go towards bridges or towards light rail that even our Muhammad Ali Airport is set up to receive light rail. We are a bigger city now. We have a great, big, amazing population of immigrant and international people coming in. And, bridges were a lot of money and a lot of waste of taxpayers' money. So we do need to improve TARC. I've put in my plan about improving TARC routes and starting with the TARC 3, making sure those services are adequate for seniors and the people that need them. Free fare months. I know Brother Friendly says every month, but we need to make some money, so free fare month so people can plan to take TARC, because really, you don't plan to take TARC. You only take TARC unless you absolutely have to. Make sure the stops are better, broadband, Wi-Fi, make sure people can charge and go, bikes, shelter, bringing all of those up so TARC is a viable option, making more walkable communities and places where TARC can connect to some type of railroad transit. We need that bad. And then, pay TARC drivers well, connect TARC to tourism all over our county. I think that the transportation issue can actually bring us more together as a city and a county if we get that right. I don't want to run around the whole county, but I will ride a railway or I will ride TARC if we had it ready. Thank you.
The most transformative improvement, I think there's several things. First, I think we need to complete the network redesign analysis that we started years ago and make those practical changes that broadly connect north, south, and east and west. And I think we have to create from that micro-transit solutions and partnerships with employees to really unlock the potential of these different areas that can't get to particular neighborhoods. I think we have to have a smarter use of our resources, and I think we have to be more responsive and recognize that youth today may not ride the TARC because of narratives that are, again, old. I think we have to make riding the city bus something that is trendy, something that is cool, and so to speak. And I think we can do that through the proper use of all the ways that we create these kind of narratives. But I agree with Shamika, and yeah, so.
I'll agree with what's also been said. I think I'll give a realistic, practical kind of point of view and a more fanciful one. The practical one is I think TARC should be fare free, and I think the service should be improved. When it's cold and rainy or when it's very hot out, there's bus stops that don't have shelter for that. It's kind of an inconvenient service to use now in inclement weather, and it's hard to predict, like we said, because the lines aren't digital on your phone. Though if we're going to develop in the city and we have the money to do it and some vision, I think light rail would be an excellent way to do many things. One of them would be to there's a saying that rooftops follow railways. So in our underserved or neglected communities, if you build a station there, they tend to have economic development grow up from around that. TARC routes can change, but rail stations won't. It'll also help with sustainability initiatives, which is a big issue for a lot of people. The amount of CO2 that cars release is a huge problem for our city that's spread out along a wide area. There's a lot of commuting that would be cut down with rail, and so that would be my answer. I think we need to make TARC more convenient, make it fare free, and if we're going to go think big, let's think about rail and how we can use that to rejuvenate some of our communities and save the environment.
Well, just as Shamika said earlier, I think some of the other candidates have read my notes here. So I think that this is one of the many issues that I think you'll find all of us up here tonight are in close agreement on. Yeah. I agree that we really should be focused on light rail. We need to focus on, as Shamika said, right now folks might just be taking TARC because they have to. I hope we can change that so people are taking TARC because they want to, because it's a cleaner, greener, and healthier solution, and it gets you well and in a very economical way from point A to point B. But I think, once again, I know I've said this before tonight, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do things that we never thought we would have the money to do here in Louisville. Because it's not just the American Rescue Plan, but it's also the federal infrastructure plan that has been recently enacted, where there are hundreds of millions of dollars available for investments in things like light rail. So I think, let's think about transformation. And let's make light rail a reality in Louisville. Let's connect, as Shamika was talking about, the airport to downtown. Let's connect, as Tim was talking about, the west to the east. And let's just not unify the city around common goals and values and aspirations, but let's literally unify the city through transportation. And we can do that and bring people together. People can get to jobs, they can socialize, they can go out. There'll be so many opportunities. If we have fixed line development, development will sprout up around that. We'll have dense, walkable, clean, green, walkable neighborhoods. That is the way that I think all of us want to live.
I'm going to agree with everybody who said free ferry, because they absolutely should be free. And as far as the TARCs are concerned, they are not designed, let's say, efficiently. Like, I've had to take TARC before myself, and you know, you have to take a TARC from Preston. To get to Preston, you have to go all the way downtown and then back the other way. And that's just, it's counterproductive. I would hire my administration would hire a whole new set of TARC drivers who will be paid fairly, because that's really all it needs. It doesn't need funding. People need to get paid fairly, because as long as wages stay stagnant, nobody can get pay raises. That's why cops don't make any money. That's why TARC buses don't make money. That's why we have a jail that is underfunded. It's like, we need to pay people. That's it. Like, you don't need to make it cool. You don't need to, like, you know, make it hip. You just need to pay bus drivers, you know, or pay.
Thank you.
I mean, you know what I'm saying. But I mean, it's a cool idea. Maybe we should get, you know, them painted, or, you know, like put a cardinal on some of them. But, you know, we could, you never know. I mean, you know, I mean, that would actually go a long way. See, that's my transportation mission.
We have stopped sharing our notes. I think we're all sharing our notes, but clearly infrastructure and transportation are critical elements in the community's economic growth and really the quality of life. And I've been a huge proponent. I know TARC firsthand, having spent many of the years working down at TARC. And we're behind in the development of a transit system that really meets the needs of our workforce and especially underserved areas of our community. We need better access to public transportation. We've said that, you've heard that. We need more routes and longer hours. So as you look at national surveys and users of public transit, the access and hours availability are critical as a means to get to work, and frankly, as we do a good job, we have to invest in expansion. We have an opportunity, but we have to be very aggressive to going after the federal infrastructure and other grant funds to help fund an expanded public transit. We must connect with light rail from all aspects of tourism, education. We must connect downtown to Simmons, to the University of Louisville, Spalding's, on to the Kentucky Fairgrounds, where there's an unbelievable opportunity forthcoming with the General Assembly having invested $200 million, and then to our airport. So as we bring our individuals in to enjoy what Louisville has to offer, let's put them on light rail and be a modern city.
Well said. Mr. Gas, solar power.
Yeah, solar power.
Jay Lynn, I believe you have a question.
What is your plan to lower incarceration rates and the recidivism rate in our Black communities?
Who's the two?
We're going to start with Mr. Finley.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Yes, sir. What is your plan to lower incarceration rates and the recidivism rates in our Black communities and neighborhoods?
Stop locking people up. I think that we don't have to overthink this. In our city, we have a dysfunctional jail. We have an proven unfair criminal justice system. We have an issue within the culture of our policing. And I believe if we want to see these issues begin to drastically fall, we have to stop locking people up. We have to stop locking people up for minor traffic violations. We have to stop locking people up for things that in other areas, in other neighborhoods, is not an offense where people are going to jail. And I think when it comes to recidivism, we have to have opportunities for when people come out of jail that we're not setting them up for failure. As a pastor in this city, this is the kind of work that I've been doing for years. It's something that can happen, but you have to have leaders in place that have the empathy and the compassion and understand a community that's in mourning, that's hurting, and have an understanding of what that does to families. I believe that if our city is going to get to that place, then we've got to learn to see people in these areas as humans, and right now, that's not happening.
So again, I'll say that I'm going to keep this more general to incarceration rates in general. I don't like the issue of race being brought up specifically. I think it's divisive. That being said, I got into police work to help people, and one of the hardest things for me to see as a cop on the street was that we don't, the social safety net is so threadbare for literally everyone in every situation. We don't have the social networks in place that when oftentimes people that need help the most, they don't want it, and you can't force them to do that. But in the cases where people do need help, they really can't get it. So we need more upstream solutions, like education. The Healing Place is a great place that needs to be invested in terms of drug addiction, heroin and meth addiction, and alcohol addiction. They are fantastic. They need to be supported. They have a homeless outreach program. The idea that we're locking people up for minor offenses, as a cop, I can tell you, who has helped out domestic violence victims and people who have been shot at and harmed, it's very difficult to lock them up. It's very difficult to keep them locked up. We have to remember at the other end of this, when people are getting arrested for arrestable offense, there's actually a victim on the other side of that who has been harmed. And oftentimes, the criminal justice system will act in such a way that the only help they can really get in terms of our social safety net being so threadbare is the ability to know that their accuser is behind bars just for a little while. And I think my friend here can attest to that, is that it would have helped his family a lot more if that person was kept longer. Instead, they got out immediately and they had to endure that safety issue. That happens for literally every crime, whether it's domestic violence, shootings, assaults, DUIs. There's a lack of justice. So when we talk about arresting people and over-incarceration, let's remember that on the other side of that, there's usually a victim who's not getting the justice they need.
There's no doubt our jail is overcrowded right now. Last fall, working with folks from the judicial system, working with reform advocates, medical professionals, formerly incarcerated individuals and their families, I helped organize a community corrections crisis summit. Unfortunately, since that time, we lost more individuals who were incarcerated. That is totally unacceptable. We must address this issue with a sense of urgency. This is one of the many issues that cannot wait for the next mayor. I'm hopeful that with the change in leadership, things change now, because it can and must. As I mentioned earlier tonight, last year nearly 2/3 of our homicides went unsolved. Yet the majority of individuals in our jail right now are there on bail of less than $1,000. Something's not right with that. And so I do support bail reform for nonviolent offenders. Additionally, we do need to, as Tim was talking about, we need better programs to help prevent recidivism. We need to provide better education training to those who are incarcerated, strengthen the programs for families, and finally, we must provide more and better mental health treatment for those who are incarcerated to help prevent crime from happening again in that case, but ideally we need that more throughout the community as well to prevent crime from happening at the beginning.
Scholar, I absolutely agree about your victims with victim crimes, but getting high is a victimless crime. And that is the majority of what black people and, by extension, poor people are locked up for.
You actually
it's a
can't
victimless
get
crime.
arrested for that, actually.
Huh?
You can't get arrested for marijuana possession.
I'm not talking about marijuana, I'm talking about all drugs. Like the drugs in general. The reason that so many people have overdosed is because drugs are illegal. So they cut them with fentanyl because you raise the price of, drugs when you attack the supply, which is ridiculous. You should attack demand, like a war on addiction. But no more under my jurisdiction will the police prioritize at all drugs. Oregon's already done it. Decriminalized everything. And that's going to do nothing but bolster all communities. Harm reduction centers are centers where people can go and do drugs under the supervision. They have never once lost a person there. And if you're going to tell me you would rather someone die than to do drugs safely, well then, I don't know what else I can say to you. You're not American. You don't love this country. You're insane. You're a sociopath. what we need to do is focus on the drugs. Only people being locked up are violent offenders. And, I know I can't change the laws, but I'm sure the mayor could be very persuasive in what the police department's focusing on. I mean, even the Breonna Taylor thing, what would happen over a non-violent drug offense? That her boyfriend maybe had some drugs? Come get out of here. Like, that's, and you shouldn't be able to attack and prosecute, and by extension, lock up everybody that does drugs. First,
Mr. Nicholson?
I've done this. It's already proven. I did it when I hired the current executive director of the Criminal Justice Commission today, when I brought her to this community to work on minority confinement in our youth center. At the start, we had over 100 individuals in our youth center. At the time that I was fortunate to get elected circuit clerk, we had 45 individuals being housed in that youth center. That was working in collaboration. That was working with justice partners, all the judges, all of law enforcement. We made a mistake when we closed our youth center. I did not support that. That was short-sighted. Another initiative that I did, and I'm very proud of, is cite in lieu of arrest. So many individuals get caught up in that incarceration. We were very successful prior to merger with our county police department and our city of Louisville police department to have, and working together, develop a program that we cited individuals. And we saw the recidivism. An example is at concerts, individuals cited had a 92% show up rate in court versus an 86 or maybe an 87% by physically being arrested and spending a night in jail. And we know once you enter the system, the ongoing problems that occur to that individual and their families. So I have a proven track record on this issue.
I do too. You all won't let me escape it, right? So my work on the ground with the Bail Project has been doing this for the past 4 years of trying to get people out pre-trial that we don't have clear and convincing evidence that they need to be there. I do agree with Mr. Hardin on decriminalization. Legalization of marijuana has to be with decriminalization. I want to incentivize more arrestless interactions, support more citations as we've seen those work. Right now, because of the working group and the jail deaths, I have been asking for an amnesty period from our court system, so it looks like we got good support. But an amnesty period, we've already been working, and there'll be more than 14,000 old bench warrants for people that will be eliminated that are 5 years and older, and then there will be an amnesty day where people can come in and resolve their bench warrants, because people do get locked up in traffic stops, and that's how a lot of people come in, or they don't realize they have an old warrant. So alternative responses to how we deal with people, working with our nonprofits to alleviate and dismantle root causes that get people locked up in the first place. And here's the thing, nobody wants to be arrested. So how can we work to encourage community policing that is recognizing, doing conflict resolution, doing training? I know the Black Panther Party and so many other groups are doing Tai Chi. We stop people every day from hurting someone. Those initiatives should be spread out, providing more funding to those resources and not just funding the usual suspects, and most of all, working together in partnership to get this done.
Thank you. Joe Girth.
Just quickly, if I could, from all of you, if you're elected, do you plan to keep Chief Erica Shields in her position? And if not, what are you looking for to replace her with?
And this is a 30-second.
Mr. Gronick.
Yes, sir. I think I would definitely replace Chief Shields. Chief Shields, as Chief Conrad had a similar situation. We have SOPs and administrative regulations. She's guilty of breaking those, as was Chief Conrad in some cases. So I think it's very ironic to have a chief of police that comes from a department who's in charge of the law, who herself has broken administrative regulations. Specifically in the case of officers that were fired in Atlanta, most people don't realize you can fire officers for pretty much everything. But when officers get their jobs back, it's usually because the chief has violated the due process. Oh, it's only 30 seconds?
30-second answers for this one.
I get rid of her.
Rapid fire.
I bring back someone who is from this community, who's representative of this community, who's in touch with this community, and who has a record of integrity.
I'm rooting for Chief Shields to succeed. We need her to succeed. We need LMPD to succeed. We need Louisville to be a safer city immediately before there is another mayor. That said, I've made no promises of any jobs to anyone and don't plan to. That's presumptuous before getting elected mayor, and so I have not made that decision. But in terms of what the next police chief needs to do, it needs to be someone who is committed to making LMPD the best police department in America, and by that, I mean one that has the best trained officers, is the most trusted, and the most transparent.
So I have been in talks actually with a guy named Michael Wood Jr. He's ex-Baltimore police officer, and he was a sergeant in the military, and he shares the same values that I do, and it's that we need a police chief who will put the oath of serving and protecting over the department, over their image. To serve and protect is what the oath is, and that's what the oath should be to the community. It's, all these, Eric Shields or whatever, she's fine, I guess, but she does not share my same values of oaths.
Thank you.
If, when I'm lucky to win on May 17th and November 8th, I will immediately on November 15th appoint a committee to recruit and retain the very best possible professional individual that will restore the confidence and trust in our police department. I would highly encourage the current chief to continue and apply for that opportunity, having served on a transition for a police chief. When Chief White was brought to this community, I know what I will be looking for. I know what I'll be asking that committee to look for
Thank
and
you.
restore that confidence.
Thank you.
You all know I'm running because she was chosen out of Atlanta while I was in Atlanta, door knocking. No, I think we need someone that's from our community, worked up through the ranks. But the last committee that was chosen, 7 people said that I asked them why, and they said she had the best answer on race. We know that that's not true. So if we do, I want to make an open process to select a new chief that the community chooses.
Thank you. Ben, do you have a rapid fire question?
Tim.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. Once I win, I will allow Chief Shields to go through the same process, but I will bring the community in. I will make sure that it is a community-focused, community-led initiative along with city leaders. But again, like some of my colleagues have said, I don't make any promises here, and I will make sure that the next police chief, whoever that will be one that, again, people are familiar with how the person got there. It's not done in the back room, and it'll be something that I believe will move our city forward.
So we'll start with Mr. Greenberg for this one. Mayor Fisher's been in office for over a decade. What grade would you give him for his time in office, and why? And we allow pluses and minuses as well.
I would give Mayor Fisher an incomplete. There is still a lot of work to be done in this community. We have a lot of work to do to repair the community, to unify the community, to invest in the community, to make Louisville a safer community. And so that is my initial reaction to your question. There's still a lot of work to do.
I'm going to give him an F all the way. So, just out of curiosity, what has he done? What has he done in his whole time besides allow the city to decay? I mean, it's unacceptable. See, the people like him, they believe themselves above us, and they're detached from our problems. That's why they don't care. That's why my street, I got 2 flat tires on because the roads haven't been paved. So, just need someone from the community to do it. Greg Fisher wasn't from the community, and he wasn't from the status, so he did nothing.
I would say that I do support the 2-term limitation, and I'd have to say that if I must give a letter grade and incompletes not allowed at Simmons College, then I'd have to say I'm going to give him a C, because I'm very vocal that leadership can't wait. This community, we cannot wait.
Wow. When Fisher was first elected, I said he reminded me of Clinton, and I drank the Fisher Kool-Aid, and my husband was like, I'm voting for Tandy. But I'm telling you that I give him a D. I think there's some people in the community who thinks he's showed up and done things for him, but he did not handle this situation well. And this last term has turned into a total lame duck session. I don't believe in lame duck sessions, so he has a D.
I would give him a C. He is an average, wealthy business owner, an average politician, and he's the average kind of person that we see all across America. He's average.
Grading Fisher's performance, not him as a person, I give it an F. We were one of the most safest cities per capita. We've now become one of the most violent. He gets an F in communication. You have mayors figuring out their libraries are closing by reporters. I think that the Breonna Taylor situation was exacerbated because he pretended to build bridges with the community, which were never actually built. So I think communication, safety, just the record in general, his performance, I give an F.
At this time, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. And we will start with Mr. Finley.
We stand at a very important time in our city. This moment, we have an opportunity to do what we've never done before on one side, or go down the usual road that we've done for decades. I was with Price Elementary today speaking to students. I've been doing that for years. I was driving through Newburgh, the neighborhood that I grew up in, and all through the neighborhood I saw Craig Greenberg signs, David Nicholson signs, all through the neighborhood that I grew up in. And I said, this is an ironic moment that I'm running for mayor, but I don't have the economic impact that they have, so I can't put signs in the neighborhood that I've been servicing all my life. I hope that we recognize and don't get roped into emotions by big money, big commercials, and big reach. I've been here, I live here, I was born and raised here, my family's here, and I've worked here. If you want change in this city, it's time to do something different. I am the candidate for change, and we're ready to move this city forward.
Thank you. Mr. Grodick.
My name is Skylar Graddick. I'm a moderate Democrat running for mayor of Louisville. I call myself a moderate. I'm for the First Amendment, the right to free speech for all public employees and private employees as well. I'm for the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. I'm a fierce supporter of unions and their ability to benefit their workers' wages, benefits, and working conditions. I'm a fiercely unapologetically pro-police, and I support the full legal recreational use of marijuana. There are two existential threats to our city, in my opinion. One is our lack of public safety. The other is attacks from the state. I have direct experience in both of those things. I'm the only candidate who's been a police officer in recent times. I also have a track record of when backs are against the wall and threats are being made and big people are coming after you. In Frankfurt, I never folded and never carved out benefits for my own people. I stood up for what was right and for all Kentuckians.
Thanks again to the Courier-Journal and Simmons College for hosting this, and thank you for all of you all for participating. Whether you're here or whether you're watching in person, participating in civic affairs is so important, and that's what's critical as we move forward. Because right now in Louisville, we all know we have a lot of challenges, and we know what they are. But I'm running for mayor because when I see big challenges, I see big opportunities, and that's what gets me excited. But they're not opportunities that we can capitalize alone. They will only implement solutions if we work together. And so I'm excited to work with folks, students at Simmons College, people from all across the city, young people, old people, people with all kinds of experiences from all walks of life that want to be a part of the solution. I hope to earn your support. Please check out my website, greenbergformayor.com, or even better yet, come on a run with me. I'm running through all 623 precincts across the city. As of today, I've run through 559. There's still a few more runs to go before the primary, 5 weeks today. So sign up on our website. I look forward to talking to you, and I hope to earn your support to be the next mayor of Louisville. Thank you.
It's been an absolute honor to be here today. And I'm running for mayor for the simple fact that I'm of the people. The Constitution says we the people. And I don't look to lead the city, I look to serve it. Public servant. It just happened to be that I was a server too. It kind of worked out that way. But the problem we have in politics is that everyone comes up here and puts on a performance, and they're theatrics, and there's no real discourse, there's just theater. As you notice, there's only two of us up here that don't have notes, you know, because I stand, and I'm sure Skylar does, stand on the strength of his ideas alone. Now, it may come off not as bravado or as well-spoken and get a round of applause every time, but this is real. This is who we are. And at the end of the day, it's like, if you keep electing the same type of actor, well, Tim told you what happened, the definition of insanity was. My name is Colin Harden. You can check out the website at hardenforlouisville.com. Probably should plug that. Thank you.
Well, Louisville faces challenges, and the last few years has pushed us into a crisis. Violent crime, police misconduct, the pandemic, all the negative impact of the pandemic, the increased substance abuse, mental health, isolation, shutdowns during COVID, and now inflation, change supply issues, and equity reckoning. These are real challenges. We need a mayor who can tackle them and get things done. So now's the time for experience. Now is the time for leadership. I know government. I offer years of experience and leadership. I will listen, learn, and lead. I will thank the sponsors again for hosting this and the audience for being here. Please vote David Nicholson on May 12th, 13th, 14th,
Early voting.
and the 17th. Your vote counts, so there is early voting.
You do not condone voter fraud.
12th, 13th, 14th, and 17th. Thank you.
You finished? You ready? Okay.
I'm just trying to make sure they vote 4 days.
Let's give them that. Early voting is important, and I definitely support that. One of my dear friends, Representative Attica Scott, calls me Olivia Pope, minus the affair. I'm telling you that I'm here because I believe in you, Louisville. I came back to you. I've always been serving you. All of my jobs, everything I'm connected to has been to bring us a better city. I'm just stepping from behind the curtain like many of us do as women, as minorities, as people who are working. I am a worker. I'm a worker bee, and I want you to let me go to work for our city. Make no mistake, you know, this race is very, very important. The rest of the nation is watching us. We have to decide what kind of city we're going to be. Are we going to be a city that's okay with innocent people like Breonna Taylor getting murdered by police? No matter how it happened, she shouldn't have died. Louisville can make history 3 times in this election. First, we can elect the Louisville's first woman mayor in 2022. Don't think that this is past time, because women have always held up our institutions and all the things that we value and that are important. Second thing, first woman, first black woman mayor, but most of all, a mayor of the people, which we have not had. We don't have to go the regular route. Shamika for Mayor is a movement. ShamikaParrishWright.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our candidates. Thank you to our distinguished panel. To our timekeeper. To Dr. Kevin Cosby and Simmons College for hosting us. Thank you to all of you who came out in person for this, and for everyone watching on Courier-Journal.com. We appreciate it. Thank you again so much, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. We did it. We made it, right?
Nice meeting.